Oh, Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command. Car ton bras se porte l'épée, il se porte la croix. Ton histoire est une épopée des plus brillants exploits. God keep our land glorious and free. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Thank you very much, Joel. You may get once again.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
We're confirming the agenda. Moved by Councilor Kenny, second by Councilor Desmarais. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Are there any disclosures of interest? Mr. Bodnar.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll declare pecuniary interest as I have businesses inside Shirks and Shores, and I haven't taken part in any of the discussions or nothing's been shared with me. So I will go sit in the back while you do your thing.
Your conflict is because you're employed there?
Well, I have businesses there, yes.
Very good. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Bodnar.
Thank you.
That shall be so noted, Madam Clerk. Now we'll move on to the public hearing portion of this evening, the public hearing under the Municipal Act. And I'll call upon our planner, Mr. Aquilina. It's regarding Planning Development Report number 2018-72. Subject is stopping up and closing part of Empire and Michael Roads. Mr. Aquilina, could you make your presentation?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good evening to you, members of council, staff, and the people in the gallery this evening. As indicated, the purpose of this meeting is to consider a stopping up and closing of a portion of Michael and Empire Road allowances. What occurred to notify the public is that in the Niagara this week for 4 consecutive weeks, in accordance with the bylaw for notification, notice occurred in the local paper informing of tonight's meeting. So, Mr. Mayor, what I will do is I will present Planning and Development Report 2018-72, and I will run you through a series of short slides. There's really not much to present, but we can do that if I
can hit it with my shoe.
it might work. Well, get something to 5? Okay. Carrie, would you know how to actually expand it to the full screen?
Go to slideshow. Up in the red section.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, it's not clicking for me.
No, I didn't have to before, but. Let's try it.
Great, thank you. Sorry about that, everybody. So the first slide will just show you the area in question. The orange lines you see running through this map is the road allowance, and these are property ownership lines. So the key is for this presentation is the road allowance of Empire Road. There's Empire Road. If you follow that orange line, it leads you right down to Lake Erie shoreline. And it's the same with the Michael Road allowance. The next slide will actually show you more clearly, right there. What this indicates again is you will see Empire and Michael Road, but in particular, the stopping up and closing is for those two road allowances, but you will see in the dark lines where the closing would occur too. This next slide here is the actual slide that shows you the reference plan that was created to stop up and close that portion of Empire Road. And you will see again, it's the black lines. It's part 1 on Plan 59R 16-102. So the proper legal description of the property is part of the road allowance between lots 4 and 5, part lot 5, concession 1. So what the city had to do was to actually prepare and create the reference plan showing exactly the portion of Empire Road that this would apply to, as you see on that slide. Same thing with Michael Road. Again, a reference plan was needed. It's part 1 on Plan 59R 16-103. Proper legal description is part of the road allowance between lots 6 and 7, concession 1. I lost the presentation, but that's fine. So the only thing I would like to add is we did receive comment at the time of the preparation of this report, and that comment came in from Cindy Mitchell, but there was no municipal address associated with Cindy Mitchell. And she had indicated that her intent was to speak at the meeting and raising the concern that Shrixton Shores has enjoyed the use of the roads for financial gain and unrestricted access while the community has not. Mr. Mayor, members of council, Mr. Vincent is in the gallery this evening. I would like to add that the process to be followed is if any member of council has any questions to myself, I will endeavor to answer those questions. There may be an opportunity, if needed, Mr. Vincent would then address council. So at this time, Mr. Mayor, I would like to ask council if there's any questions of clarification to myself.
What is Mr. Vincent's capacity at this hearing?
Mr. Vincent is the city's manager of strategic projects and corporate initiatives.
And the letter to which you referred to the individual that you did not have a mailing address for has been filed with the city?
Yes.
Expressing her concern?
Yes, it actually is contained.
She's here.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
And that letter is attached to this public meeting report for your information.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I did receive inquiries from the public as well. I had individuals that came into the city to look at the actual maps. There's no comments written by members of the public that came in to see me, but I do like to add that there has been correspondence by way of email that has made inquiries to myself, and the individuals have been satisfactorily addressed.
Thank you. Members of council, do you wish to ask Mr. Vincent some questions? Ms. Butters?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mr. Vincent, could you come up to the podium and tell us what you can about your involvement in this situation?
Do I need a mic or anything to speak? Oh, why not? Okay. Well, I guess my involvement with Shirkston goes back to 1993, to be honest, when I was the city manager here. And the city has been having discussions with Shirkston on many issues, trying to encourage that development to move ahead, to grow, to provide jobs, and obviously taxes to the local taxpayer. Also, as a part of those discussions has been permissions that Shirkston has gotten to use the road allowances, the unopened portion of the road allowances, for putting in water and sewer crossing and so on. There's agreements in place that are standard for that particular use. I think back in, I'm going to say, I left Port Colborne in roughly 2000, came back in 2005. But somewhere in that particular area around 2000, there was discussions about, I guess to put it in colloquial terms, addressing the issue of Shirkston. Perhaps it would be better if the city is never going to open that road allowance, then Shirkston should pay for it, and the city taxpayer could then benefit that way. So preliminary discussion started with that Shirkston, which is not the current owners. The current owners have transitioned over the years. The most recent discussions that I became involved in, I guess started about a year and a half ago, and effectively was, if council were to close up the road allowance and put it up for sale, would you be interested? Number one. And number two, could we come up with a tentative price for that now? That information, before it's dealt with by council, will have to be shared with council and brought to a public meeting. So I don't intend to put those kinds of information out today. There was one other issue, or two other issues actually, that came up during the discussions. And one was that the Empire Road allowance, not the Michael, the Empire, has been, I guess, an indirect benefit to the residents of LOS 1RO, which is the postal code, that allowed those people to access the Shirkston beaches, going back, I guess, forever almost. And the city's position that we took on this was that would have to be protected if the city were indeed to agree to dispose of that land. So a part of any sale of the land will be, in perpetuity, access for those same residents to the beaches, under the same terms they've enjoyed in the past, which is they can walk from the outside of Shirkston down to the beach, they can use the beach. Any other access to Shirkston facilities would have to be on the basis of whatever Shirkston is prepared to offer. An example, if Shirkston wanted to say, okay, we got 500 people coming through, why don't we try to attract them to use the bar? They could do that. Well, the kids coming through, maybe they want to use the slides. They could do that for a price. But the residents have, and will have, in perpetuity, it'll be registered on title, that they will have access through unopened Empire Road allowance to the beach. The second item was, as people would know, there's a cemetery that is within the fenced-off area. Again, any agreement, final agreement, will provide access for any relatives to visit, provide access to whoever's maintaining it, the city at this time, unrestricted, other than normal business hours. Obviously, we wouldn't want to try to put any corporate body into a position where they can't manage properly access to their property. And that is the two key components, I guess, that I know I saw some of the emails that Mr. Aquilina got that people were concerned about, that all of a sudden they were going to lose access to the beach. That is not the case. That is going to be protected. Thank you. Any other questions? Or?
Yeah, perhaps don't go away, Mr. And to gain access, would they go to the office at Shirkston Beach before going out?
They will have to provide evidence that they are in fact a resident of the postal code area. Should that change, by the way, we've also put a provision in that it's the current area that's covered by that postal code that's protected. So if for some reason or other the federal government said we're going to change the name on it, that will not change the access.
And if properties are sold, that would pass with the ownership.
It goes with the property, not with the person who's there now, but with the property itself. And that helps to protect the value. Let's call a spade a spade. some people would buy a higher price if they have access to a beach that close and walking through some of the, very nice facilities there.
Ms. Butters, did you have a question?
Good, thank you.
Mrs. Kenny?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Vincent, when I look at the map that was provided to council, I see that in some areas that there are actual housing or trailers on the road. On the road. So they've gone ahead and built trailers or there at the far end, actually, of this map on page 5. So they have been building or expanding their businesses using, at the present time, city-owned property. Is that correct?
I'm not an engineer and I'm not a planner, so I'm going to indicate
Not
that
only just
the mapping does appear to show that there is some portions of people's property which are.
One looks like right on there.
And and we've raised that with them, saying this is how they, again, it wasn't the current owners.
Correct, I know that,
It
yeah.
occurred in the past, but we certainly raised that as an issue, and once the final decision of council, if it is to in fact dispose of it, if the price is acceptable to council, then that issue will go away, because the access, the walking access, I think is down Wildwood Road, is it? There's a different way going down than where those properties. But yes, the evidence is right in front of you.
Okay, well, I just find that.
Did they require a building permit?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, at the time when Shirkson was developing, there was no requirement for site plan control. Site plan control would actually get into the details of what's being built or where trailers are being placed. There was a time where the municipality did not require that.
It's interesting. Just one more question, Mr. Mayor.
I wasn't here.
Mrs. Kenny?
Okay. God, I can't remember how many years ago it was that I worked for Shirks Shores. It was my first job, actually, as a teenager. But anyways, I need to ask about the cemetery, which is, they're going to have access to that cemetery as well. That's very
Yes.
important.
That's correct.
So you wouldn't have to have an LOS
Now, if you-
1RO?
If you have a family relative in there, you're guaranteed access. That's
And how
provided
would they would just go to the gate and say, that's my
That's right.
great-great-uncle,
for. That's right.
and they'll not be given a hassle?
No. I mean, I would doubt there'd be very many people that right now.
Alive, still.
It's quite an
It's
old
been quite, it's
cemetery.
quite an old cemetery, it is, yeah.
But people may be doing studies and that kind of
Sure.
stuff. Sure, we give them, I mean, the principle here is that to protect the public's interest in the cemetery.
Correct.
And the public access to the beach. That have held this for a number of years, going back maybe 40 years, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And what we're saying, from a council perspective, that's what we wanted to protect. The rest of it is, what's the price and can we get it
Okay,
the best price we can?
thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Any other questions of council? To my left, any questions? Just to interest, is that cemetery an active cemetery? Are there in fact bodies interred there? Yes?
I don't think I don't think anybody's been buried there for the last 30 years, but I don't know that for a fact.
Okay.
The city maintains it, I think, at the present time. We mow it, that kind of stuff. So.
No questions of council? Are there questions of members of the public? Cindy Mitchell, did you wish to come forward? Thank you, Mr. Vincent.
West End.
Cindy, could you give us your full name and address?
Okay, Cindy Mitchell, 974 Pleasant Beach Road, Shirkston, Ontario. I've lived in Shirkston my whole life. I wanted to clarify a bit with Mr. Vincent. I can recall as far back as when the last official plan was done with the city of Port Colborne, there was site plan controls and the M&R and everybody involved in the development of Shirks Shores. So they were fully aware of the road allowances and whether or not they could be building on them or not building on them. The city was well aware that there was infrastructure going in and trailers and that being built and decks being built on our public land, and we've never benefited from that. As a resident myself, it's hit and miss whether or not you can go into the park. Sometimes you're denied at the gate. Sometimes you're allowed in. One owner had us go in and do photo ID and, you know, show proof of address, and you had to have an ID card, and then that stopped and all of that. But one question I was curious about is Michael Road seems to be like the cutoff point where the closure is way back. Is that Shirkson property or farm property, like the old Michael farm and them?
Mr. Aquilina?
Mr. Mayor, the one map that I have in the report will actually show you, if I can get to it.
The maps online were hard to, I mean, when you tried to zone in and stuff, they'd like go all over the place and do what they wanted.
Oh, so if you see, that's not good.
Yeah, it's not cooperative.
This slide right here, Mr. Mayor, you will see, if you look on the left side of the screen, you can see right now, I'll show you, the orange line there is the Empire Road allowance. That first parcel of land is not owned by Shirkson Shores, but everything to the east is.
So there's a fence line down there. Is that where it's going to end?
To the east of the property. So that land to the east of the road allowance is owned by Shirkson Shores.
Okay. Because there's a fence like with locks on the gates and stuff like that. I was just wondering if that was Shirkson Shores or farm property.
No, they are the owners.
So, I don't know, I guess maybe I'm here because I don't think a lot of people had awareness that Shirkson Shores has benefited or Shirkson Resorts for decades on city-owned land. And I'm not aware of them having funded the city for use of the land or anything like that. The other things, so I just wanted to point out that there was like multiple maps and site controls and all of that when Shirkson was developing and building. And the M&R and the other ministries were involved, but they still just did what they wanted to do. So I don't think the public is fully aware of what this means. And I know they enjoy it. It's our land, but we don't have any say over it. It's all private, it seems like. But I don't know, some of us were talking out in the community about maybe wool. And I know a lot of people aren't happy with this, but in lieu of getting some money for the property, but also because there's so much privatization of beaches, and there's lack of public beaches, maybe widening Pleasant Beach so it's a larger public beach for everybody to access. Within Port Colborne, it would promote tourism and stuff like that. I know parking's a problem down there, but that could be a problem resolved in the future by some means that could be developed. I mean, even the placement of the new garbage bins down there cuts out a bunch of parking spots. I live up on Pleasant Beach Road. I find it difficult. I can't even park down there. Like, I don't have very good access on Pleasant Beach, but with the beautiful sand dunes, and it's a striking beach down there. I mean, it's a way of Port Colborne promoting, like we lease Nickel Beach which isn't ours. You go down to Vimy or Centennial Beach and Gasline. In August, you can't tolerate the odor down there. It's horrendous. Even the couple, like the little restaurant down there, they have a hard time because there's no parking. One gentleman, and I can't use his name because I didn't ask permission, he said he had explored the idea of making part of his land a little parking lot where people could walk to the beach, to Pleasant Beach. He was told he's not allowed to do that. Like, say, charge $10 or $25 a day to park in private land and walk down to the beach. There's some people that, because I kind of walked around and spoke with some people one day, cottagers that have like the little cottages back in and all that, they seem to have a sense of entitlement down there at Pleasant Beach. You know, we don't want any more people down here, you know. We want it more private. I just sometimes think maybe we should look at getting money for the land that does belong to Port Colborne, but also expanding a beach, if that could be an open, like, considered as a thought. Like, even though I live up on Pleasant Beach Road, I've lived out there my whole life. I'm not right beside the property, but we do endure a lot of traffic. Drunk drivers, people come out of the park. Sometimes they tend to come up our road to avoid the police on Empire Road if they're drinking, driving. They drop their beer cases in my front lawn. The last couple of years, we've been hearing like them bird cannons or bird blasters to get rid of wildlife, which is very intrusive. Fireworks are lovely. I don't see them, but every other dog in the neighborhood is barking, barking, barking. There's probably more people in Shirks and Shores in the summertime than there is in the whole city of Port Colborne. I don't know.
Ms. Mitchell,
Like, I'm thinking maybe that if there could be like funds paid to the city, and should they be paying in hindsight for rental of the land too? And I don't know why the city of Port Colborne allowed them to develop on our land and not have any funds from it. And
Ms. Mitchell, we have a time period of 10 minutes.
Okay.
And you've made a number of points that I think members of council and our staff will take into consideration in negotiating a sale price with Shirks and Shores.
The other question I wanted to ask is there going to be more public meetings involving this, or more
As far
awareness?
as closing up the road now is no. Mr. Aquilina, do you have a comment?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's why you may have seen me drop back there. What I have done, I've put a sign-in sheet back there. So I would ask any member of public to sign your name if you have an email address or municipal address, and I can inform you when council will be considered to stop up and close the road or the closing or the sale of the property.
Mm-hmm. And I noticed that you spoke that there had been like 4 weeks of notices put in the paper, and I'm not sure if it was you. I brought awareness to that one of the dates that this was to occur was incorrect. So it had to be corrected, and it was placed in the paper correctly, but it wasn't brought to notice that this was the wrong date, you know, like make time for the correct date. So I don't know if a new count should have started on the public notice.
Mr.
Given the
Aquilina,
wrong
can you
date?
respond to that?
Mr. Mayor, once I was aware that council was not having a second meeting in May, I then abruptly told our public communications officer to actually put in the paper the new date and to do that for 4 consecutive weeks.
Okay. I guess I'm out of time.
Thank you. Are there any other questions of council? Mrs. Kenny.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Cindy, you mentioned that one of the landowners there wanted to make space for people to park, but was told he could not?
Pardon?
But was told he could not do that?
Yes, and he didn't say who had told him, and
Was it somebody from the city?
no, it was, I didn't speak to anybody from the city, I spoke to a resident in the community.
Right, but that resident, did he say it was somebody from the city who told him he couldn't have?
Yes,
par-
he did.
Okay. But that would have been bylaw? Would have been bylaw that did that, do you know? Mr. Aquilina, maybe you could help me out. Would someone tell an individual who has private land that they can't put a parking lot on there, on their private-owned land?
Through Mr. Mayor, if a parking lot is to be established for commercial gain, it needs to be properly zoned.
Property zone, which zoning would it require? Just for my own information.
Through Mr. Mayor, it would have to be a site-specific commercial zone, or any site-specific zone, any site-specific decision that council would need to make to allow that property to have a commercial parking lot.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kenny. If you want to pursue that further, you could do that with Mr. Aquilina. Again, any other questions of council? There being none? Well, does someone wish to make a motion to allow additional people to speak? Do you want to come forward and give us your name and address? Have your name and address, sir.
Hello, Mr. Mayor, members of council, and members of the public. My name is Rick Hesp. I'm a lawyer in St. Catharines. And I'm here with Mr. Brooks, who is the owner of the lands adjacent to Michael's Road. He owns quite a large area of road there. What's your address?
I own the Michael's Farm, which is to the west of the property that they're thinking about closing off.
The west of Michael Road,
The west
road
of-
allowance.
Yeah, west of Michael Road Allowance. Nearly right to the point where, there was some mention of a fence at the southern end of that Part 1, and Mr. Brooks owns that land right to there. So one of our concerns is that I called Dan earlier this week, and I did write to him indicating that I represented Mr. Brooks, and I asked him what the purpose of the closing the road allowance, and it was he told me that it was confidential and a secret. It wasn't to be disclosed at this meeting, and we're still quite not sure. We know that Shirks and Shores has put in some kind of a request to buy the lands, but we're not quite sure what they're going to do with the land. And so that's a concern. There's a number of neighbors here who live on the northern end of Michael Road, and they're concerned that Shirks and Shores is going to buy the land, and they're going to put a road through here, and it's going to, have a significant impact on the quality of their properties there. So it's unclear at this point, and I'd like to ask Mr. Vincent what the intention of asking the city to stop up and close the road allowances, because it's not clear from the report. And until now, we didn't even know that Shirks and Shores had even requested the reference plan be registered on title.
Mr. Vincent, can you respond to that question?
Mr. Mayor, and
Could you move?
Yes, thank you.
Could you move closer to the mic, Mr. Vincent?
there might be, I can-
Yeah, you can say it.
there you go. I'll sit down. It's a little easier. The Michael Road Allowance is an on-open road allowance that is adjacent to Shirks and Shores, and certainly as one of the options is to sell it to the adjacent property owner. That deal has not been done, so it's still up in the air.
Okay.
There has been discussions about it, don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to mislead you at all. The issue, though, becomes, as far as I think you made the comment that they might open the road, well, the road's going to be closed, there'll be no road allowance to open.
Okay.
That's my understanding of the way the thing works. So it'll just be land. Now, if there was a split in the land, then it would still be not a road. It would just be addition to the land to whomever. I guess the second part of that issue is, in the old days, it had to be sold to abutting landowners, had to be offered. That was changed when the municipal act was changed in 2005, I believe.
Right,
I got the right date? Something like that.
right.
So it really is still in council's hands, if I put it that way.
That's it. The other question we had was, Shirks and Shore owns all of that land to the east of Michael Road and the unopened road allowance?
Yes.
Okay. And Mr. Brooks owns on the west side,
I believe so, except at the very end, I believe.
except for the very end
Yes,
where
where it goes into the beach.
where it goes into the beach and where there's some development already, there's some, yeah, okay.
Properties that were built there.
So, still not clear on what the purpose is, because if it's unopened, then it just allows the public in the future to have access to the beach.
But should it be sold to Shirks and Shores, they
Yes.
would have to come back to council and say, we want to do whatever. And that council of that day would have to decide whether that's appropriate or not. Similarly, if it was sold to
Mr. Brooks?
Mr. Brooks, sorry about that, sir, I didn't mean to besmirch you. Same thing would happen.
Sure,
So it's not, nothing is done. The
right.
deal right now. The issue is, where do we go from here?
Is, do we know how it's zoned now, or what it's, what kinds
It's an
of
unopened
development?
road- It's an unopened road allowance.
And the land's west of that? The land's owned by Shirkson?
I'm not a planner, so I'm
Okay.
gonna defer.
The land that Michael Road allowance goes through is actually designated a provincially significant wetland.
Okay.
So it's environmental protection.
Okay. And the land's west of the unopened road allowance?
The lands west would be zoned agricultural,
And the land's east?
would be recreational resort zone to allow Shirks and Shores
Okay.
to have their sewage treatment plant there and to do other land use on their property.
Okay. All right.
One other question I had, and I apologize, we only found out about this a short time ago, but the road allowance really goes above and beyond the point where it's marked off on the map. In other words, there's, on both sides of my property, the road goes right through the middle of my property, so I have farmland on the east and on the west side of it, until we get down further where they've kind of got it cut off. Is it the plan of the city to maintain the road allowance along or through my farm and then not maintain it when it comes to the point where Shirkston is on the east and I'm on the west? I wondered, because if they're not going to maintain the road allowance down there, and they're not going to maintain it up there, then why wouldn't they close it off up by Fire Lane 17? And that way, abrogate the need for the city to maintain any of it. In other words, if this is a plan to cut costs for the city in order to allow them to not spend money on undeveloped land or an undeveloped road allowance, the road allowance that covers that area between my farm is undeveloped as well. Technically, I'm the only one that uses it to drive my hay wagon or my planter or my tractors up and down there. So I was curious why they picked that one area to cut it off. And maybe Mr. Vincent or our other gentleman can tell me why they cut it off there. I know that Shirkston Shores doesn't own that land. I own that land completely. Was it because they only wanted to cut off the part that they own prospectively? Or was it because they wanted to save the money that the city is spending to maintain that road allowance? Do you get what I'm at, where I'm
Can
at?
anyone respond to the question?
I'm going to respond, Dan can correct me. My understanding is that the map that you have seen up here, which is the unopened road allowance, the other portion, even though it's not paved and so on, is an open portion.
Okay, and is it your intention to continue to maintain the open portion?
Well, whatever we've done to date, I defer that to the council and the CAO, but, you know, if it's open, it's what it is.
The other problem is my neighbors are all here because they're concerned that if Shirkston Shores buys that unopened area, and then the other area is already opened and the city maintains it, that there's nothing to keep Shirkston Shores from putting in another entry at Wildwood Beach, which is right at the end of Michael's Road. So thereby, if we sell it to Shirkston Shores, if you sell it to Shirkston Shores, as Mr. Vincent just indicated, they can do whatever they want with it.
No,
They can open it up potentially,
that's not correct.
they could open it up
That's
potentially.
not correct.
They-
Mr. Aquilina just said that this is a protected area, number one.
Well-
They would have to get through that exercise. Secondly, they would have to convince council of the day to permit whatever they were proposing to do.
Yeah, prospectively, they could do that. They could make an application. I mean, they've had no problem here making an application without taking into consideration the people who live on Michael's Road or the people who own property on Michael's Road.
The only implication here is a non-open portion of the road allowance.
Well, that's all we see today,
That's-
but you can't assure me that in the future, they're not gonna come back and say, we wanna go ahead and turn that road into a road that we can use for an entry into our property.
As you know, governments evolve and they do weird things.
Well, it's not a
I
weird,
just-
with all due respect, my friend, it's not a weird thing. Economically, that's the only reason they would want to close, economically, that's the only reason they would want to close that road. My friend indicated a number of years ago, I think Mr. Vincent said they toyed with the idea when some other owners had had it. Then it was left in abeyance for a number of years, and now all of a sudden they want to open it up again. I know there was a fire in Shirkston Shores this past summer, and I know that the fire company had to come in through Empire Road. But if they had another way to come in, that might be a benefit to the tenants down there. They could get in quicker. On the other hand, I think that the young lady who gave some evidence earlier said, we can get in there only once in a while. They keep changing the rules for the people who live in the neighborhood to come in. That is very true. I couldn't get in there last summer unless I went through the gate and paid my money and told them that I wanted to buy the property, because that was how I got in. They wouldn't let me come in as a resident of Port Colborne or Shirkston. So I come back to my question. What exactly are they going to do with that land? I mean, someone should be able to tell us that tonight. If you're going to go ahead and close it and move it up to another step, then the general public should have the right to know what that land is going to be used for. I'm sure that Mr. Minson must know.
I don't.
Well, then maybe we should have another hearing date when Shirkston Shores comes forward with a representative and tells us what the land's going to be used for. I'm sorry, gentlemen and ladies, but that's, I can't go beyond that because, I mean, you're welcome to, I don't know if any of my neighbors want to, I know that one person lives on Michael Road. There's only one property registered on Michael's Road. He's here tonight.
We'll ask if he wants to go forward.
Thank you. We're done now.
We're
For
done?
now. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the body of the chambers that would like to come forward? I see two hands.
You might want to talk to him first.
Ask, well,
On
there's-
Michael Road.
you gentlemen come forward, give me your name and address, please.
Hello, everybody. My name is Paul Doherty. I live at 4471 Michael Road, which is on the corner of Michael Road and another dead-end street that runs parallel with Highway 3. I purchased that property 3 years ago in regards to having a decent family life out there, no through traffic. Now, quite often during the summer, there's people trying to get into Shirkston Shores with 30 to 40 foot trailers that drive down there and they're going the wrong way. So that's an issue with me because there's nowhere to turn around. So, and I've got two young children that play outside all the time. That's why we moved out there. No video games, none of that sort of stuff, right? Family, farm life sort of thing. So, and as stated before, my wife was told this year that Shirkston Shores is not allowing people with the Shirkston Shores postal code access anymore. So we're supposed to be guaranteed that for however, so.
Mr.
Any say,
Vincent, you want to respond to that?
sorry?
The access to Shirkston
Yeah,
property.
any deal that's done with Shirkston to sell Empire Road allowance, that's the road allowance, will guarantee in perpetuity, whether you own the house or you sell it, whoever's living in that LOS 1RO, access. Now, you know, the fine point about what you need to bring,
Well, I had to bring my property taxes in.
well, again, you know,
To prove it to them, right?
I think that should be able to be rationalized pretty simply. I mean, we all have licenses, we all
Yeah,
have
well,
whatever.
that's the thing, they
So,
don't
I
want
mean,
people renting.
I'll certainly, we'll certainly try to clarify that within the details. But the sole reason that discussion went on was to protect the interests of the residents there, to make sure that no matter if it gets sold again and sold again, and all of a sudden some company decides, it'll be registered on title.
Now,
City council of the day will then be able to enforce it.
My other question too is, if there's gonna be no more meetings in regards to this situation, why have we not received all the facts on what is gonna be built around that property? So, like, I can probably guarantee you that they're gonna try to put a through road through there. It's just simple facts. It's gonna happen, so. And I'm opposed to that. Like probably everybody here is. Like, Sherkson has started to, like, overrun our quiet neighborhood. You know what I mean? I enjoy people prospering, going there, but it's getting kind of out of hand. So that area is a 40-kilometer-an-hour zone. Every weekend, there's people going 80 through there with no concern to other people that live around there. Pleasant Beach Road, that place is a disaster. Like, I'm glad there's no access from my road to get down there, or I'd be dealing with the same thing. So, like.
We hear your concerns.
Yeah.
And thank you for bringing
Okay.
them up.
Thank you, guys.
Gentlemen, white shirt, could you give us your name and address, sir?
Honorable Mayor, Council, my name is Robert South. I recently purchased a 20-acre property at 789 Michael Road, and part of the attraction for me was the fact that it was a dead-end, quiet country road with only 2 neighbors. I'm very familiar with Sherkston. I'm a fan. I used to own there. My ex-wife still does. But I'm very concerned that the only reason they would want to purchase this is for the addition of an entrance to the park. And my concern is for this future. Maybe it's just for fire access, but I know it goes right to Wildwood Beach, and I'm afraid that it's going to be eventually opened as another park entrance. So what would that mean for our road? Would we get commercial zoning? Would we get pavement? They don't even plow the portion south of where Mr. Brooks lives, but it still is publicly maintained. So I'm really just reiterating the comments of the neighbors.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions? There being none, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Now we have one more gentleman. Can you come forward? Name and address, please.
Mr. Mayor. My name is Darrell Moore. I live at 554 Empire Road, and I've been there for 30 years, and I've seen it all. I've picked up hundreds of beer cases off my front lawn. I have a bag of garbage every day, every weekend, between what comes out of the cars going in and out as they race out. It's a drag strip. Every weekend. Somebody's going to get killed there. Mark my words. I got to check my notes here because I didn't make anything. One thing I'm concerned about, first off, is there no open bidding on city property? Has Sherkston already made a deal with the city and nobody else has a chance to buy it? I've never heard of this before.
The municipal act says that if a property is contained both sides by the landowner on both sides, that's the person you have to try to deal with. Now, you can not sell it to them, don't get me wrong, but if you're going to sell it to anybody, they have the first option. That means that the city has to agree to the price. So it's got to come back to council. Don't get me wrong, this is not a done deal. This is a proposed deal. But, you know, for the land inside to be put up for public auction would not stand the test of the law.
Why not?
Because you can't.
What if I wanted to develop my property and put in a park and have them get access to the lake?
I'm going to let Dan answer the technical
Through
answer.
our policy, disposal of surplus property, if it's deemed to be a non-buildable lot, it is offered to the adjacent property owners.
That's quite a substantial piece of property. That's not a building lot. You
And
could
that's
build-
why it's to be offered to the neighboring property owners.
Well, doesn't seem right to me. If they sell that property on Empire Road, It's pretty obvious that the gate is going to be moved. The entrance to the park will be moved because they won't have to have it where they are. They'll be able to develop that property. That's going to put the front gate 150 feet from my door. I don't want that. I just got away from all the lineups from 20 years ago, where we couldn't get in and out of our driveway for days at end. Yeah, one of the other issues that's already been brought up on the other roads is the heavy traffic. There's no sign there that says it's a dead end. So everybody comes down that road looking for a drive along the lake, gets to Shirks and Shores gates, or decides ahead of time, they end up turning around in my driveway or everybody else's driveway. Anybody there, it's not unusual to get 100, 150 cars on a weekend turning around in my driveway. The other one I was concerned about is how can they manage to use city property for so long with no payment? I don't understand that. That's a substantial piece of property. That could have raised the city's a very good chunk of income instead of selling it. When other municipalities are trying to find ways to allow their people to get to the lake, Port Colborne wants to sell it. I don't think it's a good idea for many reasons. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions of this gentleman? Being none, are there any other people in the body of the chambers that want to address this issue? Okay, Mr. Aquilina.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will conclude, this does conclude the public meeting. What I will then do is have a subsequent recommendation report to council to do with the stopping up and closing of the two portions of property. And based on timing, it may coincide with a public report through Mr. Vincent's discussions to then bring that back to council. So it may be one or the other. Maybe report stopping up and closing the road allowances. You may have a separate report dealing with the sale of any property.
Councilor Butters.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mr. Aquilina. The people in the gallery tonight, for them to be notified of when this comes back for our consideration, you said there's a sign-up sheet at the back of the room, correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that is correct. There
So-
is a pen and a paper.
So anybody who signs that sheet would get notified of when this is coming back, is that correct?
Correct.
So I would suggest that all of you who are here tonight on this issue, make sure you sign that sheet so you can be notified when this comes back to council. Thank you.
There being no further discussion on this issue, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn the special council meeting regarding closure of Empire and Michael Road. Moved by Councilor Demery, second by Councilor Kenny. All those in favor? See those hands again, please. Carried. Meeting is adjourned. I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of Committee of the Whole, 13-18, today, Monday, June 11th. Having called it to order, are there any addendum or delegation items? Madam Clerk?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, there are 3 addendum items this evening. There is a motion from Councillor Kenny with respect to a request for proposal regarding limiting the city's water loss. Item number 20 on the agenda, Engineering and Operations Division Report number 2018-74, subject operational overview of Port Colborne's water distribution and wastewater collection systems. And item number 21, Community and Economic Development Health Services Division Report number 2018-87, contractual incentive agreement with Dr. Kelly Miracle.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I'd entertain a motion to confirm this agenda. Moved by Councilor Bodnar, seconded by Councilor Elliott. All those in favor? Carried. Are there any disclosures of interest this evening? There being none, it shall be so indicated. Mr. Elliott, do you have a, you're sure? It should be noted that there are no disclosures of interest. Call for the adoption of minutes of the regular meeting of Committee of the Whole 12-18 held on May 14, 2018. Would someone like to make that motion? Councillor Kenny, second by Councillor Demery. All those in favor? It's carried. Move on to determination of items requiring separate discussion. Councillor Kenny.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Number 19 and number 21. And I'd like to also request at this time that the delegations, second delegation that's here for the residents of Lakeshore Road East come before our presentation from our staff, our health services coordinator. And also that 21, which she's coming here to talk Rural Medicine Week, but 21 is also her baby, I guess we'd say, for her first as our health service. I'd like to bring up 21 at the same time as her presentation.
Okay.
And I'll speak to that issue as well.
We've got a request to move up the delegation on Lakeshore Road East.
Ahead of the presentation, yeah. Thank you.
Ahead of Ms. Monroe. Do we have that motion on the table? Seconder, Mr. Elliott? Vote, all those in favor? Carried. Okay. 19 and 21, and 19, 20, and 21. Is that correct, Councillor?
19 and 21.
Okay. Any other requests for determination? Nothing further? Okay.
20, we have to do 20 as well. Yeah, okay, I'll do them all. I'll do all the addendum items, all of them.
20, 19, 20, and 21.
Yeah.
We're clear on that, yeah.
Yeah, all the addendum items,
Are
yeah.
there any other items for separate discussion? Being none, I'd ask for approval of those items not requiring separate discussion. Moved by Councillor Butters, second by Councillor Demery. Call for a vote. All those in favor? Can I see the hands again, please? Carried. Okay, would call for the delegation of Mrs. Linda Kramer on behalf of the residents of Lakeshore Road East regarding the property at 709 Lakeshore Road East. Can I have your full name and address, please?
Yes, Linda Kramer. I am here with Chief Bogner this evening. I'm the former owner of 679 Lakeshore in this community. And Tees Bogner is the former owner of 709 Lakeshore Road East, the subject property in question. We first appeared before council, many of you will recall, on December 12th, 2017, at the time that there was a public hearing with regard to a minor variance. That isn't the topic tonight, although there are three aspects to this particular matter.
Mrs. Kramer, can I just interrupt? We've got 10 minutes for your presentation.
Yes.
Just want to bring to your attention.
Yes, thank you. So, Mr. Mayor, members of City Council, city staff, and ladies and gentlemen, I have been asked to appear this evening on behalf of a neighborhood committee of residents on Lakeshore Road East. They have ongoing concerns on an open matter involving the state of the lakefront property located at 709 Lakeshore Road East. I'm a former resident, as I've mentioned. I live directly adjacent to the subject property. Tees Bogner lived on that property. Tees is a master photographer. He's here with me this evening to verify that the photographs with which some of you are familiar, but which have been distributed tonight, are in fact true copies of his original photographs. Some of them are before and after timed photographs, and others are more recent, taken approximately a month ago. With us this evening, we also have two of the most directly affected neighbors. The owner of 735 Lakeshore East, Candace Calling, the owner of 688 Lakeshore East, Harvey Snyder, and 723 Lakeshore East, Dr. A.V. Gomez. There is also another concerned citizen from Lakeshore East, Joe Stavorik, here this evening. What our focus and the reason we wanted to present tonight is because I mentioned the three aspects. So there is this disturbance of the subject property site and the effect and encroachment that is being experienced by the directly adjacent properties through debris, noise, and an unsightly appearance. That's what we're here for. The other two aspects, I understand, are separated into an environmental protection category on the property, EP zoning. NPCA is involved in that. As I understand, there is an ongoing matter for that. That has to do with disturbance of the stability of the bluff and the initiation of a private road to the beach without regard for bank stability and proper permits, as I understand it. The third aspect, well familiar to council, I'm sure, is the matter of two structures with one purported to be existing and one proposed to be accessory. This aspect will be the subject of an upcoming OMB hearing scheduled for June 26th. I understand that the owner of the property has retained a planner for that appearance. The neighborhood group, which I represent, has consulted with legal counsel. And what we're concerned with tonight is the level of disturbance at this site and the length of time that it has been occurring for. I realize some of you, as I passed around the photographs, said, oh yes, we've seen those. Yes, in fact, you have. The property changed ownership April 30th, 2014. And I'd just like to ask Tees, while he's up here with me, to just verify that these photographs that you have copies of are in fact, he's looked them over previously, but they are his original photograph material that have been copied for this meeting. And that this in fact is as well, this larger diagram that you all have at the back of your package.
So good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of council. Back in 2014, we sold our property, but a few months before that, I took photographs of the property to market the property in the real estate brochures. So the photographs would have been taken in 2013 in the summer and fall. So after I heard of this disturbance, I realized the best way to show what the before and after would be to take a few new photographs from the cemetery, which is where I took the original photographs from, which is the best vantage point of the property. So then by combining them together in one sheet, you can see the before and after of each of the different views. And I think then you can see for yourself the changes that have taken place.
Now, subsequent to our appearing on December 12th, at that time it was a minor variance matter before the Committee of Adjustments. We subsequently received a report on that. That's how it's been appealed and is proceeding to an OMB. I realize there's a new entity now, but essentially under the old rules, an OMB hearing. And we have found that in those subsequent months, we were advised that there was a special meeting on April 20th ahead of our intended appearance on April 23rd at Council. We were told that there would be a directive. I don't know exactly whether you call it an order or the terminology, but a directive given to the owner and her partner to rectify, clean up, or otherwise remedy the situation, that we could wait and see what happened as a result of that, and schedule ourselves for a future agenda. So we're here tonight as the first opportunity to basically just keep the visibility on this situation. I no longer live directly in that neighborhood, but I did live for 35 years on the lake, in both this location and also in Lorraine Bay. I am a real estate broker with D.W. Howard Realty Limited. We have offices, as many of you know, in Ridgeway as our primary office and a satellite office in Port Colborne. This is my corridor. I have friends here. I have clients here. I have a unique knowledge base because of that background. I've lived in Port Colborne for many, many years. I think that as a community, you have the opportunity, such as I, to do the right thing in this situation. Also to avoid a very negative precedent being set. Because if you don't show strength in this situation, and I just direct that sort of globally to council, staff, management of the city of Port Colborne, but if you don't show strength, you risk being perceived as weak, allowing people to have careless disregard for their properties, whether knowingly or unknowingly. That should not be allowed to continue. And this has been running for 4 years. I only became aware of it. I knew the property, I saw the disturbance, but I only became aware of the frustration of the residents, the attempts and the background providing of input to the staff at the city, and then later, more recently, the escalation and the necessity of involving the CAO of the city in this matter and trying to raise awareness. I understand that you cannot speak openly in a formal format such as this evening about an open file in great detail. I am aware of that. I also am aware that visibility has to be maintained on this until it's rectified. And this has been allowed to be turned right upside down. I think a picture is worth 1,000 words. And if you look through those photographs, there can be no question in anyone's mind that there's been a significant level of disturbance to this site. Also, one further piece that comes from my background, we are at a 40-year high of lake water levels in this area. We promote Port Colborne as a destination for tourism, canal days, residents who want to move from more urban areas, come down here for a better quality of life, a better lifestyle. Many of those people who come down here, I don't think this is news to anyone, but I'm also a registered nurse by background. Many of them who come down here are at a point where some of them have made some money on gains on their properties in the Toronto corridor, but they're not all wealthy. Some of them have come down here and they are trying to conserve their equity, replace that with a good quality life in a home. They're guarding their health or they're dealing with health issues. They cannot afford, truly, to pay lakefront taxes and on top of that, to have to worry about their shoreline protection being undermined. In 1985, we had a devastating storm a number of us are familiar with. In 1986, many of us as residents had to deal with shoreline revetments. I worked together with 3 other families in my immediate neighborhood in Lorraine Bay at the time. We administered that through a shoreline program, but we paid it back in 10 years on our municipal tax levy, and my portion was $43,000 in 1986 of a $160,000 contract. You can imagine the price today. And what happens if you don't all band together and you're in a vulnerable area is the adjacent neighbor undermines yours. I have other photos. I did not circulate them tonight. I'm happy to confer with anyone on council. They also come from Tees. Tees has a 30-year history of being in that location and has the 30-year-old photos that show the devastation. We have sort of 7-year water cycles. The International Joint Commission monitors them, and we are now at a 40-year high. All we need is the wrong fall winds and combination of prevailing winds and waves and an unstable bank, where someone has not done what they should have done due diligently, and we will have devastation on our hands again. So I think it is not about a single property here. It's about the principle of the situation. And I am calling you for some sort of decisive action where this matter is dealt with swiftly. And yes, the neighborhood group does intend to follow through to make an appearance at the OMB hearing. At this point in time, I understand with the representation of council, that's just being finalized. I thank you for your attention, and I'm open to questions, as are Tees and others in the gallery that are directly affected.
Thank you, Mrs. Kramer. Are there questions of Mrs. Kramer?
Yes. Ms.
Councilor
Butters.
Butters.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to thank Linda for coming tonight, and Tees and the neighbors. When you see a picture like this, and up here is obviously the before picture, and it's really beautiful. There's ferns and tulips and jack-in-the-pulpits, and it's an absolutely beautiful piece of property. And when you look at the bottom, that's what it is today, and it's horrible. There's no other word for it. It's horrible, and it seems it's probably been, without a doubt, the most frustrating situation I think I've seen in a long, long time. It seems like we just try to make a little bit of traction and then lose ground, and then no traction and lose more ground. And to see that this is still the same way it's got to be heartbreaking for the neighbors, because they've got to look at this ugliness every day that they come by to their own homes. Here's another one. Beautiful, beautiful area. Here's the bottom. That's what it's like. I don't know if the boat's been taken off, the boat that's sunk in the sand, if that's been taken off the beach yet. There's other pictures here that you can see.
Councilor Butters, we've had the pictures.
But the rest of, but I want everybody to see
Do you have
what these
questions
people.
of
Yes.
the witnesses?
I want everybody to see these pictures and realize how this property has been disturbed. And so if our staff can give me some kind of update, some kind of anything that would say to me that there's an end in sight, I'd love to hear it. Because for months and months and months and months and months,
Years.
there has been no end in sight. And you're right, Councillor Kenny, years.
Thank you. Councilor Kenny, then Councilor Demeray.
I have to hold up one too, Your Worship. Look at this. I hope you can hone in on this, because this is what the property looked like prior, and this is what it looks like now. This is what Linda was telling us. When you owned it, Tees, it was beautifully kept, well-maintained. Now it's like this. Now, I know the NPCA is involved, but they better be quick, because I agree with you, that will be devastating, not just to that property, but to Dr. Gomez's property beside, Candace Collins beside. It will destroy that whole area. Mr. Mayor, we were just at your house.
I encourage you, show those
Yeah.
to your fellow councilor. It doesn't do you any good to show them to the audience.
Well, they need to know,
We make the decisions.
yes. And we better be doing something. It's been 4 years since this whole term of council. Nothing's happened. Nothing.
Thank you. Councilor Demeray.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to any member of staff that can give me this answer. It's very clear that this is an unstable bank that's ready to create great devastation if there is the proper storm in place. Would this property owner be liable? I'm wondering if that property owner carries enough insurance to take care of the problem that could come out of this. Do you know if there's a liability on the property owner for the damage they've done to this, to the entire spot?
Through Mr. Mayor, to Councilor Demeray, I am not aware of the liability insurance on this property, if there is or if there is not. I can't confirm.
Councilor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to take that question just a little bit farther to the one that will really mean something to those of us sitting in this room. We as a city have had this sitting with us for a long time, and it is still not dealt with. Are we liable?
Are you in a position to comment on that, Mr. Aquilina?
No, Mr. Mayor, I'm not a lawyer or our insurance provider.
Mr. CAO?
Through your worship to Councillor Demery, once again, not a lawyer, can't offer a legal opinion. I would tend to think that, see, there is a major issue here, and I think that the delegates have made reference to this. Everything to do with the dune and the disruption of the dune is NPCA authority. We do not have the authority, and I know council and the residents don't like to hear this, we do not have the authority to regulate the work that's being done on the dune, the disruption of the dirt, the removal of the break wall. We absolutely are in charge of lot maintenance and property standards, which is what is on the property, and we know there are things on the property that are out of compliance. We also know that there's some construction materials and whatnot on the property that need to be regulated through changes that the council has made to the bylaw. But we cannot enforce the construction or destruction of the dune. That is the Conservation Authority's responsibility. I would suggest that our staff is in contact with the Conservation Authority staff. I know some of the residents are as well, and I know the mayor is a member of the board of the Conservation Authority. So I think the avenue has to be to apply pressure to the Conservation Authority to uphold their end of the enforcement bargain alongside of our bylaw staff.
Thank you, Mr. Louis. I just
Councilor Demery, go ahead.
Okay, I would just like it if we were to get an opinion, a legal opinion, to be certain that we're not liable, and I would also like us to take every opportunity to apply as much pressure as absolutely possible to get this dealt with, and to take care of our end of it as well.
Before I go to Councilor Butters, are there any questions on my left? Councilor Bodnar, then Councilor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to staff, and I guess it's Dan. The presenter made some pretty serious accusations about council and staff being weak and not following through on these, on what we've done. It's been a frustration for council sitting here and trying to deal with things. I'd like your response to that. Because it's a complicated case, and most property standards are, have we neglected what we're doing?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councilor Bonner, I'm going to say, as you mentioned, it's very complicated, the occurrences that have happened on this property, given the time it started. The fact, as you mentioned, there's traction and then there's retraction. So there's a lot of reactionary things that have been done on the property, and the city is trying to uphold the city's bylaws. There's a process to be followed that gives any property owner its due course to ensure that the bylaw actually is enforced properly. So to answer your question, my goal and my dream was I didn't have to get to the point where we are at today. But unfortunately, there's certain things that our hands are tied, as Mr. Louis had indicated. So there are certain things that we need to follow with the bylaw, and council has not been at play, or the only thing that council has done is change the lot maintenance bylaw. We did that this year. That allowed us to have more enforcement on this property. As Mr. Louis alluded to, when you're talking construction material, previous bylaw, there was nothing regarding construction material and how long that could be actually put on the property. 2018, council changed the bylaw to address that.
Bonner? Mr. Elliott?
Thank you, Mayor. Just a quick question on one of the photos. I'll just hold it up quick. It shows the seawall, and then in the bottom picture, it's gone. Has that been the boulders? It's under there, so it's just been buried. That hasn't been removed. There's a picture that shows the seawall, and then in the picture below it, there's no seawall. Has that been removed, or has that just been buried?
A very small portion does appear to be there in the picture, Councillor Elliott. We would believe that most of it has been undermined and or buried, so to speak, but it's no longer an effective wall. And also that I had failed to mention that that is directly adjacent to an unopened road allowance of the municipalities. And so the one owner at 679 Lakeshore that I'm here on behalf of, he is right beside the unopened road allowance and right beside this property. So there's that stretch that's also to be considered there. But it was all tied together with one protective wall at one point in time.
Thank you.
Councilor Butters.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Can anybody from our staff tell me what actually has been removed from the beach or the property in terms of, I'll call it non-construction material? Because I see a heck of a lot of stuff in these pictures that I wouldn't call construction material by any stretch of the imagination. Has there been any cleanup done in this beach area? Has a boat come out? Has this, you know, the boat trailer that's buried in the sand, has that been removed? Has, you know, the garbage been picked up? There's like broken pieces of junk everywhere. Like, has any of the beach been touched at all in our efforts to clean this property standards side of this? Never mind the front, just the beach for now.
Louis, do you have a comment?
Sure, through your worship to Councillor Butters. I think if bylaw staff were here, you would hear the all too familiar can't comment because it's an open file answer. But as council is aware, and maybe for the benefit of the delegates from the neighborhood, this item is also on tonight's council agenda as a closed session item.
Yes.
And that's a forum where council can receive very specific updates about enforcement practices about an identifiable individual. The Municipal Act is designed to protect the privacy of identifiable individuals by allowing council to have those discussions in closed session and get, I guess, a free flow of information between staff and council. And the plan, it's a coincidence that you're also here the same day. It's not because you're here, but it's because some council members requested over email that staff provide an update, and that is one of the very few updates that's allowed to be provided in closed session. So back to Councillor Butters, I would probably advise that's a great question for a little bit later tonight. And I think that our bylaw officer will be here. She's not here at the moment, our bylaw supervisor that is. So you can ask that question and have it answered in closed session.
Well, okay, but I'll bet you if I ask Candace, she could tell me what's left on that beach.
Oh, excuse me? What is your name, please?
My name is Candace Collins.
Okay, Candace, can you just wait 2 seconds and we'll ask for permission for you to speak? But unless there's anything more to be added by the delegation here or questions of council, thank you very, yes?
The only other thing that I didn't draw reference to, that as you go into session, I think it's timely. Timing is always important in anything in life. This property, of course, you have the drawing as well, and for those of you that don't access the real estate or legal geo-warehouse site, the beach frontage on this property, which is triangular in nature, is 10.39 feet. And so part of this, what Councillor Butters was just referring to, the boat, the trailer, etc., they are on the property of other neighbors. The swath is about 100 feet in coverage, and the ownership legally is 10.39 feet there on the beach. And so, of course, privacy is an issue, and that's been raised with us, that, you know, a homeowner has rights, yes, but a homeowner has the right in law and in real estate to quiet possession of their property, provided they're a law-abiding citizen. And in this case, the other neighbors have also, in closing, the right to quiet possession of their properties and not to have their property values devalued. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Kramer. We appreciate your concern. We appreciate your frustration. Members of council have the same concerns and frustrations, and it's not as if you're calling out to voices that are not listening. We are. It's just we have to follow the proper procedures, which is difficult for you to accept and for us to understand as well. So we'll Your idea of coming here is to keep pressure on council. I appreciate that, and we shall continue with that. At this time, we have another lady, Candace, who owns the joint fire. Candace. Do we have permission for Candace? You didn't register as a delegate, but do we have permission for you to appear tonight? You making that motion? Second by Councilor Kenny. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Please come forward. Your full name and address, please.
My name is Candace Calling, and I live at 735 Lakeshore Road East. And I thank you for all listening. I am retired. I live 2 doors down from this gentleman. And any questions you have, I can answer because I live there. I'm retired, and I walk the beach every day. I would tell you, living there since the gentleman moved in has been an absolute nightmare. I don't understand. I really don't understand. I can't comprehend what has happened. And it continues. I can honestly say that I don't believe that the people who are doing their job for the city have removed one single item. I live there. I walk there. The property is covered. There is not a square foot of property. The Gomez's property, the city property, his property. There's not a square foot of property that is not covered in debris. It looks like it's Beirut. You have never seen anything like it. And the scary part is, I don't know where he gets this from. I don't know if it's trucked in the middle of the night. I'm not exaggerating. There are the most bizarre things all over this property. It can't be coming from one house. Every time you turn around, there's more debris, different debris, metal debris. It's almost insane. And it falls on completely deaf ears. I met with Dan twice, 4 years ago, and nothing has happened, nothing. I have phoned and come down to City Hall. I have begged and pleaded and approached anybody who would listen to me to please stop this. And it's madness, and I can't pull into my driveway without my blood pressure spiking the minute I come from either direction. I can't sit on my deck and look at the water because there's just an explosion of garbage down the whole bank and onto the beach. The boat that's been sunk for 4 years and the trailer, it's sunk. And the part is I brought it to city, to Dan, and I told him that the boat is sunk in the sand, that the engine is pouring oil and chemicals all over the beach. Nothing was done. Nothing has ever been done. He chopped down every single tree and threw it over the edge. He built a shack made out of scrap lumber that he snapped over his knee. He then used melamine boards as well, sideways, to build a shack. He put shingles on it. He filled it with empty cases of Corona beer, and then he burnt it to the ground. There is some kind of madness going on, and nobody wants to address the issue. And I don't know what happens. No matter who you talk to, no matter how you beg, nothing changes. And now he's completely destroyed the dune. I'm 2 doors away. I can't afford to restore my dune. And to answer your questions, the wall is underneath all that sand. He took his tractor and first of all, he took all the steps, everything he tore apart. Then he took his tractor and just took it down the hill and dug right down to the hill. He cut down every single tree on the property. He stripped off every inch of grass. The Fowler toad, which when I first moved in was a delight. There had to be 500 toads cross my property in the first season that I was there. I've seen 2. He stripped the sand dry. All the toads, if you're a toad, do you want to go up over the grass and the driveways, or are you going to go to the sand? He moves that tractor around all the time. He moves sand from one end to the other. He was actually taking sand from behind the break wall and putting it on the front, where he dug up the whole front of his house, where it looks like it's going to slide down the hill. And then he brought in trucks of debris because he has a friend who apparently supplies him, and just dumped it on the front. He buried car roofs. He buried a barbecue on the dune in the front that he previously dug up. I've just never seen anything like it, and nobody is helping us. It's on a weekly basis. It's worse. I literally call and I cry because it's so bad. Like if you guys ever adjourned and went there and walked on that property, you would be so horrified. And when you do the canal days and the boats go by, it's visible from the boats. It's visible from Google Earth. It is a blight on Port Colborne, and it is a nightmare for all of us who are retired, and these are our life savings, and our lives are being ruined. It's so hard to come home when you come home to this disaster, and you can't even sit on your deck and relax. And like I said, he's spread out all over the Gomez's, all over the city, and his whole property, from the very front up the hill to the very back, is covered in debris like there's nothing you've ever seen in your life. He built a shack on the hill out of scrap materials that blows down every 2-3 months. He just leaves the scrap everywhere and moves on to something else. I've never seen this amount of destruction in my life. And we're just so desperate for help.
Mrs. Colling, you
I know.
made a graphic presentation.
Thank you.
We appreciate that. Are there any questions of Mrs. Colling?
Any questions at all, gentlemen, I can answer because I'm right there and I see it on a daily basis, and I saw it happen, including when mention was made that somehow the dune was destroyed. I watched him take his tractor down the hill. It was not magically destroyed. He took his tractor down the hill and plowed a road, and he cut out all the trees and threw them over the balcony, or over the balcony, over the deck.
Mr. Danch has a question.
So good presentation, by the way.
Thank you.
And it's important that you want to look after your home, and I'm right there with you, but if this guy's got his tractor on the beach, do you call the Ministry of Natural Resources? Do you call the NPCA?
I've called everybody, and I have begged for help. I even called the fire department when he burnt the shed to the ground, and the fire department came back and called me and said, I have never, this is 4 years ago, the fire department said they have never seen such a mess in their life, and this was 4 years ago. 4 years ago. And they said, if he burns something again, call us. He even put indoor furniture out, there's the 2 levels and then up. He put like an old couch on the beach. It's just mind-boggling. Like he's getting metal scrap from somewhere. And like I said, he's dug up the whole front of his property, right to within 10 feet of the front of his house. And then he realizes, oh, my house is going to slide down the hill. So then he brings in old car parts and a barbecue, and he just throws it down the hill. He goes with his tractor down to the dune. He picks up from behind the break wall. He's actually digging from behind the break wall. He brings it back up and throws it in with the car parts and the batteries and whatever else he got delivered in the middle of the night.
Thank you, Mrs. Colling.
Any other questions, sir?
Councillor Butters, one final question.
Yes, this is just directed for the CAO, through you, Mr. Mayor. So this all sounds like, how could this possibly happen? And wouldn't the Ministry of Environment or somebody give a damn about this stuff being dumped? And I know that I asked that question of the CAO, and I want you to publicly do that answer for everybody to hear, because I was shocked at the answer. Go ahead.
So through your worship to Councillor Butters, I am aware of most everything Ms. Colling brought forward this evening. We talk probably on a weekly or almost weekly basis, or over email, she and I. And I have many, many reports of the type of material that's been imported into the property, because we do know that this property owner has brought in outside material. This was reported by our staff. Our staff have not, it's not a case of our staff doing nothing. We have done things. We've reported this to the Ministry of the Environment, and a local agent, I guess, enforcement agent, came to the property and toured the property and came into my office, stood across my desk from me, and said that a person, an owner of a property in Ontario, even a residential property, is allowed to bury whatever they want on their property, including asbestos, because there was a possibility that that was one of the materials being buried, and that it is only a violation that the Ministry of the Environment is interested in enforcing when it leaches or contaminates a neighboring property.
Water supply as well, if
So
it's rusting.
they were not interested in pursuing the buried car parts, hoods of cars and roofs of cars and sheet metal that was buried in the dune.
Or asbestos or whatever else was in the...
Correct.
And I guess the thing as a neighbor that I want, the one somewhat kind thing I want to say is, if this individual would realize if they wanted their little shack on the hill, or if they just would have made it, buy a shack, make it out of something nice, clean your place up, we wouldn't have any issues. We just want our home returned to normal.
Councillor Butters has one more question.
I just have a question. So because the MOE has those kinds of rules, or lack of, depending on your point of view, is there a way that we can incorporate into our bylaws that a person cannot bring in this kind of thing and dump it on their property. Would we be able to have something under our city bylaws that prohibits such action?
So through your worship to Councillor Butters, I could ask our legal advisors, but I'm going to lean towards no. We can regulate the materials that go into certain constructions, like you can't build a fence out of certain materials. You know, for example, a tire fence, that's not allowed. But if something is permitted by the province, we can't over-regulate what the province has already established. It would be deemed, in court, it would be deemed ultra vires or above the law or beyond the provincial law. We need to be within the provincial law and set standards there. So we couldn't make a more strict rule than the province already has.
But we do have rules, and don't we, about what you can use for fill?
Yes.
So is there wiggle room in there, I wonder? I'm just looking for a little wiggle room.
Any
So
comment?
your
Mr.
worship, I'm not
Aquilina?
sure if Mr. Aquilina would know about the lot maintenance bylaw and the fill bylaw. Fill rules.
The lot maintenance bylaw deals with the actual, either it's grass over a certain height, the fact of material that is placed on the property, we can regulate that through the lot maintenance bylaw. The removal or placement of fill is with another bylaw that discusses if people want to bring in fill to a property and raise it up to a certain height that is outside of a building permit, they need to get approval to do so.
So can we tap into that part of the bylaw to influence what's happening on this property?
Mr. Aquilina?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if there is material being put on the property that impacts the neighboring properties, then it's something that maybe we can address through the placement of fill bylaw, if in fact that is occurring on the property.
Well, then can I ask that that be investigated and see if that is a route to be taken?
Mr. Aquilina?
Mr. Romeo, I'll take that as advisement that that would be a complaint that is being made by Councillor Butters.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Demery?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do understand that the Ministry of Environment is the agency that would be responsible for what's happening in the front part, in the road side of the building. But on the beach side, and with, in particular where the boat is sunk and there's various debris laying there, would that not fall into beach protection, shoreline protection, that sort of thing? And would that not be the federal ministry?
Unless Mr. Aquilina knows better than I do, I was thinking Ministry of Natural Resources, which NPCA is the agent of in Niagara, but it didn't occur to me that it might be DFO. So let me take that back to the office and look at it tomorrow.
I don't think so. Okay, I thank you very much for your appearance
Can
here
I
this
just make
evening.
one last statement?
Yes.
My biggest fear is because I have been on hands and knees before anybody would listen to me, that this would be cleaned up. And I don't know what else we can do. I don't know. I mean, like I said, Canal Days is everything for generating revenue. You go by and you can see Armageddon over there. It's so visible.
We appreciate your comments.
Okay,
I
I'm done.
can-
I'm just praying I'll get help.
I can't make you any promises. It's on council's radar, and I'm sure after
Aren't
your
you a neighbor too, sir? I believe.
presentation.
Aren't you one of my
I do
neighbors?
live on Lakeshore Road East.
You don't? I thought you did for some
I
reason.
do.
Yeah, you do.
And
So we're gonna make.
know what you're talking about.
No, I'm
and
making
I
a
agree
joke
with
right now.
100%.
I'm making a joke. We're gonna make an executive decision and move you next door. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. There is a gentleman has stood up. Mr. Stavorik wishes to make a presentation. Do I have council's permission? Moved by Councilor Demery, second by Councilor Butters. Let Mr. Stavorik be allowed to make a presentation. All those in favor? Opposed?
good?
Mr.
Thank you.
Stavorik, can I have your full name and address?
Joe Stavorik, 871 Lakeshore Road East. Just to give you a little brief here, I am an employee of Ontario Hydro. We ship material, and what this guy is shipping and enlarging his property. This guy's actually enlarging his property bigger than what he purchased. And he's bringing material in to enlarge in his property. Is that right or wrong, Dan? Can you do that? I used to sit on a bylaw
Mr.
committee for 2 years.
Can he
All
respond?
right, yes.
Through Mr. Mayor to Councilors, to Mr. Stavorik, if material is being shipped onto the property and it's in violation of the fill bylaw, it will be investigated and enforced.
Now,
I
this has
think
been,
what he's saying.
this.
It's not allowed.
Pardon me?
I think what he said was it is not.
It's not allowed. So
Right.
why aren't we pursuing it? You know, I used to sit on the bylaw committee and I packed it in because we used to chase people that never painted, people that had their grass too long, people that had 3 cars instead of 1. And here this guy is abusing the whole system. He's bringing in property, he's bringing asbestos. I know through the Ministry of Environment, you can't ship material from one property with another without a piece of paper. Tell them where this material came from. I work for Ontario Hydro. We ship a lot of material around. You don't have that paper, you can't dump. And this guy's dumping down the street, enlarging his property, and that, I had people, I was at a funeral down there, and I'm standing over there, and the guy looked at me, he says, "Joe, don't you live down here?" I said, "Yeah, I do, just down the street." He says, "This is a horror show, what's going on here?" And all these people here, they all talk nice, but what's gonna happen tomorrow? Are we gonna be in the same wheel? Oh, you know, we're losing traction. Where's this traction? Don't we have lawyers? Do we have lawyers to chase this guy?
Well, we appreciate.
I think we should.
appreciate
That's all
your
I
comments.
have to say.
Thank you.
This is nonsense.
Thank you, Mr. Tavares.
Yes, this is nonsense.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Is there anyone else who would wish to speak? Now that you have council in a good mood and they're accepting everybody. Mr. Schneider, do you wish to comment? And who is going to make the motion along Mr. Snyder? Councilor Butter, second by Councilor Kenny.
Harp Snyder, 688.
All those in favor? Hold on, Mr. Snyder.
All right.
We're still voting here to allow you to speak. In favor? Opposed? It's carried. Okay, Mr. Snyder, your name and address, sir.
Harvey Snyder, 688 Lakeshore Road East. I had to get a minor variance to keep 2 of my sheds on my property. And in the course of that, the health inspection, the Board of Health came to my property and said, if my shed's too close to my septic bed, it has to be moved. So I wonder, the septic bed on our neighbor, it used to be in the front yard. I kind of think it still may be there. If you bring in 3 to 4 tandem loads of brick, rubble, and put it close to your tile bed, I think that should be disallowed. And that's all I have to say.
And is that what has happened?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
We will, there's much that we have to look into, and that would be one of the questions of the health unit.
Well, it makes sense if a 500-pound shed, if it's too close to your tile bed, then 120 tons of rubble too close to his tile bed, I mean, that's a big difference.
We appreciate what you're saying.
Thank you.
One more time, is there anyone else who has some information to provide us on this matter? I note that no one has made a comment. Thank you very much, all of you, on this issue. And that's Mr. Louis has suggested we are meeting on this very situation tonight in closed session, as we have to do. At this time, I'd like to call Mrs. Deborah Rollo, our new Health Services Coordinator, regarding the Rural Ontario Medical Program activities called Romp Week. Deborah, are you prepared to go ahead? Just push the red button.
Thank you, Mayor Maloney. I'm actually just trying to get up our presentation
Okay.
here. If you can just bear with me a moment. Let's see.
can take it from here.
You'll take it from here?
So we're gonna play the video first?
Actually, if I could just take a few minutes to speak.
Sure.
Thank you, Mayor Maloney and members of council for having me here tonight. I know you have a busy agenda, so I will try to make our presentation brief. I had the privilege of attending our first Romp Week. It's actually not our first. We have been involved with Romp for over 10 years. Very, very busy week, and I'd like to thank Councillor Kenny for all of her time spent in making it another successful year. For those who don't know, Romp Week actually stands for Rural Ontario Medicine Program Week. And what we do is we actually partner with the University of Ottawa, bringing down first-year medical students to get a sense of what it's like to practice rural medicine here in Port Colborne. The point of doing this is to allow them the experience of what it's like to practice medicine in a smaller but supportive community, and also to have the opportunity to visit Port Colborne. We know that in attracting new physicians, it's very important that they spend time here, and education is critical in continuing the process and bringing individuals here. So we had 5 University of Ottawa medical students attend from May 28th to June 1st. And we were able to allow them to shadow our local medical community, the Port Colborne UCC, the Fort Erie UCC, Bridges Community Health Center, and a variety of other doctors and medical practitioners in the community. We also were able to take them on some activities as well through the support of city staff, thank you Mayor Maloney, and the business community as well. We were able to take them on a variety of highlights to kind of showcase Port Colborne and Niagara. So we have a video, a short video that kind of highlights the week, and I'm going to ask for support. Maybe, Carrie, if you can help put this up. Great. Thank you.
Just met 10 years.
Sorry.
Port Colborne has been a proud supporter of Romp Week for over 10 years and has hosted University of Ottawa students wishing to learn more about our community. Romp Week, otherwise known as Rural Medicine Week, is a unique one-week experience provided to medical students who wish to learn more about what it's like to practice medicine in a rural community. The students spend time shadowing our family physicians and medical practitioners both in an office and in an urgent care setting. Time spent here is invaluable as the students walk away with a sound understanding of what it's like to work in our smaller but supportive community.
My favorite thing was the food. My favorite thing was doing a lot of hands-on work at the urgent care center. My favorite thing was the people.
We're here today at Port Colborne Hospital with our University of Ottawa students and Dr. James Beecroft, who is hosting a suture clinic for us here.
So today we're going ahead and we're teaching some first-year medical students some of the basics of suturing. So we're using some paste feed here and some suture material and going through the basics of how you hold all your instruments, some safety issues with making sure you don't poke yourself with the needles, and how to tie proper knots so that we can get trained for actually working with people.
To other areas to get the care that they need.
Thank you, Deborah. Any questions of Deborah? Mrs. Kenny?
No questions. I want to just give thanks to Deb. This was her first Rural Medicine Week, my 10th. And by the end of the week, totally wore out because they keep you busy. Those young people keep you busy. But she did a great job for her first year, and I think she should be congratulated by us all because it is. And Carrie, thanks to Carrie too, because Carrie came and did horseback riding, which either Deb or I would not do. And Carrie, an experienced horse rider, she came and led the students on that thing. So that was, yes, so she did great. So thanks to Carrie as well. And the mayor, of course, for hosting us. The kids thought that was great because that was their first night here, and he hosted, him and his wife Sherry hosted a great meal, and the kids got to go down to the beach, which they loved. So a nice portion of the beach. Yes. So it was great. Thank you.
And one thing to mention, the city of Port Colborne actually sets the bar for Romp Week. They use us as kind of the standards because we've done so well with the program.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions of Deborah? There being none, we'll return to the agenda with a departure from the agenda with your permission. We'd like to deal with item number 21, pulled by Alderman Kenny. And while we still have Deb Rolo with us. You can go sit down if you wish, Deborah. Okay. I'd call for a motion to depart from the agenda to deal with item number 21 under determination of items requiring separate discussion. Moved by Councillor Kenny, seconded by Councillor Danch. All those in favor? Carried. We have recommendation number 21. Councillor Kenny, that was pulled by you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That an incentive contractual arrangement to Dr. Kelly Maricol be approved at a cost of $20,000 upon signing of the agreement, with all monies being used for upgrades to technology and all equipment purchased, and with the agreement that the purchase capital will remain at 97 Charlotte. Ultimately, the new Bojo build should Dr. Maricol decide to relocate, and that the cost be funded from the Medical and Physicians Recruitment Reserve, and that the clerk be authorized and directed to prepare and present the appropriate bylaw and contract.
Is there a seconder for that recommendation? Moved by Councillor Bodnar. Discussion? Councillor Kenny?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just hope that council will see the importance of this being given to this doctor. She's been here, came to us, and she did not get the incentive that we normally gave. She got, in most cases, that's why we have that money. I've always asking for $35,000. It's kind of a standard amount that is given to physicians when they're setting up to relocate. When Dr. Maricol came to the city, she only took $15,000. Noting that that $15,000 went right into her office for upgrades. Now the government has asked all doctors to enter into an electronic medical record. It's called EMR. There's a cost associated with that, the software, the computers, and all that. This is a must to really attract new physicians. She has some in the wings, which if we can upgrade this area for her, I'm sure we'll be attracting a new physician very soon to that foe. And we need to keep that foe in our community. The government is not giving out those anymore. And I just hope that council will support this endeavor.
Thank you, Councillor. Other questions, Madam Emery?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to, I guess it would be Peter. Peter, if we were to go ahead with this, would that exhaust the money that we've budgeted for this year for physician recruitment?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we budgeted $35,000 for 2018. So the $20,000 would come out of that $35,000. So
Okay,
yes, we have
and
budgeted for
do we
that.
not have some? Do we not have to pay a certain amount out because we allowed The past
We had
position,
that. We had that.
we already took care of that? All right. So we're sitting with 35,000 right now, and we're looking at spending 20,000 of
Correct.
that, leaving 15. So if another doctor comes along for this year, we can only offer 15,000, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, Councilor Bush.
So if there's doctors kind of waiting in the wings, as Councillor Kenny put it, then is the anticipation that we're going to have to come up with another portion of money to add to the remaining 15? Or is this 20,000 going to outfit that office in such a way that they don't need more if new doctors come?
Go ahead.
I can start maybe. So through the mayor to Councilor Butters, and I'm not sure if I misunderstood the question, because now I'm worried, because I don't know what Councilor Kenny's going to say. But Deb Rollo, I've talked to Peter about the amount in the reserve over the last couple of days and weeks, talking about this report coming forward. And Deb and I met earlier today, and we talked about if a doctor was to come forward, whether that person was in a practice that's existing as an additional member that would approach or get somebody to FO status, which would be good for the city, or a different practice, or a new practice from the start, we would try to negotiate an agreement that included no monies flowed in 2018, but rather in 2019, so we could work it into next year's budget. The other thing that Deb and I are working towards is some kind of a standard, almost like a menu card, so we know it'll be a little less of a negotiation and a little bit more defined. If you need these things, if you need EMR and a moving allowance and a practice, we'll know exactly what the grant is going to be. So each physician, when recruited, will be eligible for a fixed amount of grant. Of course, the one problem that we've already identified is as soon as you're offering a fixed amount, say 15, somebody who's offering 16 is ahead of you. So we do have to be flexible in what, I guess, the market is bearing. And I'm not sure if Deborah Rollo or Councilor Kenny wants to add to that, Mr. Mayor.
Deb, do you want to comment? Can you comment?
Well, I think that that's going to be very important going forward. We're already a little bit behind the 8 ball being in the city of Port Colborne. The further away, of course, you get from the highways, the little bit more challenging it is to bring some physicians. So it is something that we'll always want to keep in our back pocket, that, if it is a matter of money, we maybe need to look at ways on how best we accommodate. So whether we do it over a matter of years, looking at that type of way, because again, we don't want to lose any further physicians. This is a problem across Ontario. Everybody's feeling that pinch, and we want to make sure that our residents are treated well and that we have enough family physicians here.
Is there a comment, Councilor Kenny?
I just want to add that both Deb and I have met with Dr. Miracle, and she's very, very confident that once we get these upgrades in that office and get that physician to join the fold, that there will be no ask from that physician for year 2018.
That physician, you mean Dr. Miracle?
Dr. Miracle needs somebody for that fold, and she has somebody in mind.
Okay.
And so it's the importance is keeping the fold and getting all this office upgrade, because there's discussion that they will go in the new building that Larry Bojo is building, and it's just a matter of time for those negotiations all to come forward, and we're very confident. Deb and I are very
So
confident.
it'll be like a medical arts
Yes,
building
correct.
downtown Port
Yes,
Colborne.
thank you.
Okay, any other questions? There being none, thank you very much. And now, if we're all in agreement, we can go back to the real agenda. Oh, I thought we were on consensus. All those in favor of the recommendation? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you.
Unanimous.
It's unanimous. Okay. I'd like to provide a brief mayor's report. Again, my first item was referring to Rural Medicine Week. Again, we hosted 5 medical students from the University of Ottawa. As you see, they were given the opportunity to work with our local doctors and to experience medical education in a rural setting, and rural is like a small town. And we hope that some of them may return in future. Pride Month flag raising. On June 4th, we raised the Pride flag in recognition of Pride Month, and there was a brief ceremony in front of City Hall. West Street has seen the opening of 2 shops, the Green Apple Coffee Shop and the reopening of Cruise Quarters. Both are welcome additions to the downtown core, and I'm sure will be very popular on Canal Days. Arabelle's Tea Room has opened its doors for the 40th season. It's an awful long time, 40 years, the longest standing tea room in the province. I encourage you to come out and enjoy a cup of tea and a biscuit at the tea room. It's a nice way to relax and return to the way life was, much slower, much more relaxed. 79th Linton Davies Air Cadet Squadron, I had the honor of being the reviewing officer at their annual review held last week. The young men and women who make up the squadron showed great promise for our youth. And interesting, the review took place at the air hangar owned by Mr. Ed Russell, who was the architect of this building here at City Hall. Summer Festival media launch will be tomorrow for our summer festivals and events. This includes the celebration of the 40th annual Canal Days, and please attend and stay tuned for some exciting announcements. Kids Fishing Derby, the Port Colborne District Conservation Club will be hosting their annual Kids Fishing Derby on Father's Day, Sunday, June 17th. You're encouraged to bring your children and grandchildren down to H.H. Knoll Park for some great together time. They start very early and they wind up mid-morning with private prizes for most. Any questions of my report? There being none, Regional Council's report, Mr. Barrick is not with us tonight. He called and said that he could not be here. Councilors' items, are there any councilors' issues or inquiries they wish to bring forward at this time? Councilor Desmarais.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a few items. To begin with, I was out looking at the trail, at the various roads across the trail, the Friendship Trail in particular, and I've noticed that on the Wildwood crossing, the northeast side of that crossing needs to be cut back. It's very difficult to actually see riders coming out at that, and it's and I drive a van, so it's a little bit higher than your average car. So if I can't see them, a car is really going to have a problem. Also, at the Pinecrest Road crossing in the northwest side of that one needs to be cut back. Just a little note on that.
Of that, Mr. Lee.
Okay.
Through Mr. Mayor to Councilor Desmarais, we'll pass that on to staff and see to it as quickly as possible.
Thank you.
Very good, thank you. And I also had a couple of residents of Welland Street came to sit on my porch and complain that they were very tired because they had missed night's sleep due to a pump that has been put in just off of Welland Street right by Rodney, just inside the fence. And I went and saw it. I took pictures of it. It's a temporary looking pump. It's something on wheels and it's hooked up there, but it is incredibly loud. I was really quite surprised that I could hear it over top of the cars and trucks going by. So that's loud. And if it was on all the time, it would eventually become background noise and you could sleep. But this thing stops and then starts again. So it's waking people up through the night. So I don't know what we can do about that, but that has to change. That is really a problem.
Mr. Lee, do you have a comment?
Through Mr. Mayor to Councilor Desmarais, we'll investigate the source of the pump. It's either the contractor finalizing the project in the nickel area on the outlet structure, or it could be something that Valet is doing, but we'll verify that.
But you'll take care of that?
Definitely.
Thank you. Okay, another issue, Amelia Street. There's a sidewalk along Amelia Street. It's kind of like sidewalk to nowhere in a sense. It stops and then becomes asphalt, but also becomes hilly. So unfortunately, though, there's a gentleman with a wheelchair there, and he cannot access the street from that sidewalk. So that's a problem. It needs to be finished. It apparently was patched. The asphalt patch was put in place several years ago, and no one's ever gone back to do anything about this. It's really a problem. I did take some photos, and I will send them. I thought I sent them to myself on my council email, but they didn't come through, so I will send them to you. Okay?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councilor Demery. Yes, please send those through, and we'll have staff look at those and see if we can put that on the 18 repair list.
Okay, that would be great. My next item is the road surface on Port Colborne Drive, right by Niagara Street. That whole area there, it really needs some attention. There's cracks and gouges in the road. There's spots where your entire foot can fit in the gouge in the road. That shouldn't be happening that way. So maybe you could send some staff out there, Chris, and have them assess what needs to be done there. It's the entire intersection.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councilor Demery. Yes, we can do that as well. That's the intersection of Port Colborne Drive and
Niagara Street. Okay. Thank you. And just one other thing. I had the pleasure of assisting in the provincial election. And over a course of 72 days, I was able to speak to literally hundreds of Port Colborne residents. And you can just imagine the amount of information I gathered during that time. So as a result, for anybody who's watching tonight, I did hear you and I did write it all down. I'm in the process of splitting the lists up to federal issues, regional, and municipal. I've spoken with the CAO and I've made an appointment to come in and sit with him and go through all the municipal issues. So for anybody who's watching, it is being dealt with. Just wanted to make sure we said that. And that's everything. Thank you.
Councillor. Councillor Kenny.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just really not an inquiry or anything, just an announcement that I will not be seeking re-election in the upcoming municipal election. I have to say that it's been a very hard decision for me to make, but one that is best for myself and for my family. I thought it would be easier. I struggled with my decision for quite a long time, but this past year, I have found I have not been able to satisfy, I guess, taxpayers' concerns, taking months and months for issues to resolve. We had a delegation talking tonight, and that issue has been my whole term, hearing from them and getting emails from them. So when you can't be, and that's just me, it's just me, effective enough to make change, then it's time. It's time. It's time for me. So to any of the residents who I've worked with, supported, helped with issues, thank you for your support. But I'll have 20 years in as a councillor, and it's time I move on and leave the seat empty for somebody else to fill. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kenny. This is perhaps unsettling news. We thank you for your 20 years at this council table, and you can leave this table knowing that you have indeed made a difference. And I'm confident that you'll be recognized more appropriately at a later date before you turn in your key, so to speak. But you've done a wonderful job in 20 years, and we respect you for what you've done. And we sometimes tangle with you, but you're always smiling at the end of it. Thank you very much. And this community owes you a debt of gratitude. Thank you. Mr. Bodner, then Mr. Danch.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Chris. Chris, I just wanted to highlight Centennial Park. Oh, maybe it isn't. No, I guess it might be you, just because it involves some of the road painting, have we started painting in the city of Port Colborne? I had requested, and I think staff agreed, that there would be some markings put on from the parking lot across the road to the park, possibly like a walkway type thing.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bodnar. The Centerline Road marking contract for the spring has been completed, but our crews will be doing what you would refer to in the crosswalk scenarios. They actually, coincidentally, the machine was out getting tested and cleaned and functional this morning, so I would hope that we would see something in the very near future.
Okay, and also just on that same, Mr. Mayor, if I can, on that same line at the park, they were to look into if there was adequate signage on Vimy Ridge Road. We anticipate a few more cars going to that park with the Pleasant Beaches situation, hopefully curtailed a little bit. I just wondered if that's still on their radar to make sure that we have the proper signage that's required there.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bodnar. I know that they've done extra work within the park for the park itself for parking to accommodate vehicles, which is a much greater area this year than it was in the past. With regards to the signage, I can check with my counterpart in the Community Services and Economic Development Group to make certain that the signage is in place. We can easily enough put that in once we have acquired it.
Right. Mr. Mayor, I just think it'd be unfair to the residents there to, to maybe have a few more vehicles that we want there and not first have the proper signage in. So I wouldn't want to be here saying it's busy and it's, we have a problem and we haven't done the signage. I think we should do the signage in anticipation. So be happy if you could look into that. That'd be great.
Thank you, Mr. Bodnar.
One more. Yes. Every spring, and I'm sure Councillor Butters gets the same thing, we have a number of stone roads in Ward 4. And people that live on those stone roads. And we are, according to them, sometimes late in grading those roads. They're pretty beat up over the winter. And that's something we can rectify. But I always get the question isn't it cheaper to put some surface on that road instead of always grading, putting dust control down? So Trope Road is one example down at the end there. I wonder if, I don't need unless you got it in your back pocket now, but I don't need the cost comparison, but it's a valid question. I would anticipate that the expense is quite a bit, but is it possible to give us some thought process on, how much it costs to do a mile of stone road to whatever surface we think? And I don't think it has to be, the same we do for city streets, but I'd like to, at some point, if you could come back with that.
Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bodnar. Yes, definitely. I think what I will do is I'll have staff prepare the numbers and we'll do an information report to council, and then you can consider that in the 2018 budget or 2019 budget. Going forward, we can do a cost comparison. We can look at the historical costs and what it costs to grade and to do the dust control, and then compare that to current asphalt or resurfacing.
Thank you. That's just what I was looking for. But I think we gave up tar and chip some years ago. I may be wrong. But I drive a lot from the Shirkson area into Ridgeway and that, and it seems like Fort Erie's using something that looks a lot like tar and chip, and it seems to be doing a pretty good job. So can you just throw that into your report and see if that's something that we might consider?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bodnar. Yes, we'll give a complete composite of all the different types of surface treatments and asphalt surfacing and a comparison of all those numbers.
Mr. Datch.
Thank you, Your Honor. Through you to the fire chief there. drove by the fire hall there and I see we got a sign up that says no campfires permitted. I guess that's for everybody, or is that not taking into account that we've got 2 parks there where people have campfires all day long? In the previous council meeting, I asked for a possible report on having a little fee for a burn permit for people that did want to have it, and I never heard nothing back. I don't see anything on our agenda. I just wonder if you could give me a little information on that one.
Chief Cartwright?
Your worship, through yourself to Councillor Dance, that's on my list of items to talk about tonight. I can start now if you wish. The campgrounds are exempt from the burning bylaw. They can have campfires. They've been exempted by council. I've been in the process of trying to write a report that would make sense in the, from a different report from what we had just recently passed with regards to burning bylaw. I've talked with the city solicitor, I've talked with the Niagara Regional Police, I've talked with the Ministry of the Environment. All of them are of the same opinion as before, no. So what I'm going to present to council tonight basically is, in lieu of a permit system, which we rejected the last time. I think you had mentioned, Councillor Dance, that you had wanted to see the ability for somebody to sit by a campfire to cook marshmallows and wieners, I believe is what you said, or hot dogs. Within our current bylaw, that's allowable. Open air burning shall not take place unless it is being approved by myself, or the open air burning consists of a small confined fire that is used to cook food on a grill, barbecue, or spit. That happens every day in the city. The only time we deal with it is if it's a complaint. It would be no different if we issued permits. If we get a complaint and the permit's been issued, you're going to have to put it out. Because we got to deal with the other side of the coin, the other people that don't like the fact that people are burning things in their backyard. So I'm partway through a report. I'd be more than happy to bring it forward, but it's going to say the same thing as it said before. Basically, my view is right now, people can cook hot dogs, marshmallows, anytime they want, as long as it doesn't affect the neighbor.
Mr. Dash?
That's good to know because, you know, we've got these people that are coming to visit our community, and, you know, we're the ones that are living here and paying taxes here all year long and all that kind of stuff. And like I said last month, I'm not talking about getting the pallets going and giving her till 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, because, you know, there are those people that do have to go to work in the morning. It's just a small contained in the chiminea where we got some hamburgers and hot dogs going on. And if that's what the chief says we can do, then I think the people of Port Colborne should be satisfied with that. And just keep it small and keep it respectful, and we shouldn't have any problems. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dash. Mr. Elliott?
Thank you, Mayor. Just a few things. Through you to Dan, I had asked before, we had a discussion about some noise with a truck on the east side, and asked about an anti-idling bylaw, and Councillor Desmarais actually showed me an email that you sent to her that said we do not have one in our bylaws. Can you tell me what it takes to construct an anti-idling bylaw for the city of Port Colborne?
Through Mr. Mayor to Councillor Elliott, what I'll have to do is contact the supervisor of bylaw enforcement, have it looked into. There need to be a discussion with legal counsel, and then eventually, if something can be prepared, that can be brought forward for council's consideration.
Okay, because I'm pretty sure that we can put an idling bylaw in place, because I've been in several cities that have signs posted that say idling bylaw, especially Niagara Lake, that has an idling bylaw where you can't idle for more than 3 minutes. So I know for a fact that other towns have them, so I don't understand why we can't have one. We should have one. There's actually a sign that says by the bridges, don't idle for more than 3 minutes or 5 minutes or something like that. So I mean, if the Seaway sees fit to put that up, because I'm assuming that the Seaway, or that was us, we put that up. So how can we put up a sign that says don't idle if we don't have an idling bylaw?
Through Mr. Mayor to Councillor Elliott, merely a suggestion.
Oh, maybe we could have a suggestive bylaw then that says, we suggest you don't idle. But in all seriousness, I think we should take a look at it. I would like to see one in place. It would remedy the situation that was happening on the east side. And it makes good sense for a lot of things. Also, and I'll put this out, and I'm not pointing fingers at people, but there are times that city vehicles are left running for an inordinate amount of time. And I know it's cold in the winter, and I know it's nice to get into a cool car in the summer, or van, but if you're out of your vehicle doing work for an hour or so and you leave your vehicle running, there's a problem with that. It's like everybody else, and I don't want all the guys in the works department, everybody yelling at me, but we should practice what we preach. So, if we can have a look at that, I'd appreciate that, bring that back. I got a couple other things too. One other thing that I brought up before was a report from staff on our position on grant applications that we have made or have not applied for. Just wondering the status of that.
Mr. Lowy?
For your worship to Councillor Elliott, I've been working with staff on timing of that report. It's a combined report between engineering and finance, corporate services, and projected to be here next meeting, right? Uh-oh. Next meeting is what I was told until last Monday.
So it is next meeting, right?
Yes, it's next meeting. I've been able to pull together the last 4 or 5 years of the grants and so on, so it took a little bit of time to pull all that stuff together. So that's ready. It's just writing the report now, and that'll be coming to the next meeting.
Speaking of grants, has staff noticed anything out there on infrastructure? If you take a look at downtown, I just noticed today, kind of the corner of King and Clarence, there was a song about a tragically hip called New Orleans is Sinking. Well, guess what? So's Port Colborne, because I've noticed that the sidewalk at the corner has dropped significantly into a store, and it's now probably a 3-inch or more gap between the sidewalk and the entry to the store. So it'd be nice if we could get something going on downtown CIP. And I have had reports of extra water going into basements, so something's not working on our the storm sewer side. It's probably collapsing. So if there's anything out there.
So through your worship to Councillor Elliott, I think it's frustrating to report staff and the three of us, the Director of Engineering and the Director of Corporate Services, are scouring the grant, the emails and the different associations that we belong to for grants. We actually had a company down here called Public Sector Digest, which helps to, it runs a grant inventory service where you can go down the list and see all the different things, cultural and, recreational and infrastructure and transit. And when there's just nothing out there, and they said, their assertion, this is not staff's words, is that the federal government is very good at announcing programs and then later on announcing the same program, but very weak on the actual task of running an application with a deadline and then an announcement that there has been a grant intake and that these are the successful applicants. One of the things that we did talk about, so now we're still looking at the downtown CIP, which is the council declared #1 infrastructure project. We had high hopes for the federal money that's come out. It was announced well before the provincial election and presumably delayed. So this is a 3-party funding between federal, provincial, and municipal, which was in Ontario. There are agreements for each province, but in Ontario, in excess of $400 million for infrastructure. But we know that that was held off by the election, and there's still been no apply by, here's the application form and here's the date it's due. That has never come to us. One thing we have talked to Public Sector Digest about is the OCIF or OSIF top-up funding. The city is allowed to apply for that once per 2-year period. We have applied in the past. The amount we can apply for is around $1.7 or $8 million, and we have to put some of our own money into that as well. But we have considered at the staff level and not brought anything to council as of yet because the intake isn't here yet. We have considered trying to break off a small piece of the downtown CIP. Take, for example, one street through the area like King Street or one of the streets and just doing the entire project from underground to the surface and then waiting 2 years and using OSIF top-up money for another street and almost trying to attack the project piecemeal. I'm not sure if either of the two directors wants to speak to that.
Mr. Sinas?
Yeah, just in addition to that, although we have the OSIF funding, the people that are, the company that we have, I guess, working with us, is also looking at all of the grants that are available and determining if any of those grants we can apply to our downtown CIP or sections of it. Because there's about four or five different components. There's no one major fund that you can apply for the whole project. It almost has to be piecemeal depending on what the criteria of each of those grant programs are and how it may fit in with what we're doing. So they are looking at that for us right now. We are registered, just in addition to what Mr. Louis said, we are registered for a grant, their grant inventory. So we get weekly emails from them now and to all the appropriate staff, which will tell what new, if there's any new grant programs that are coming out and when the due dates are. And they also then hold webinars to discuss any of those grants. So we're part of that whole process now. That's sort of taken away from some of what I was going to have in the report, but that's okay.
Now, for sure, you can have the report next meeting.
I just reported.
Okay.
Yeah, just a couple quick things. Did I, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Chris, did I hear you say that we're going to get the line paintings, crosswalks, everything done shortly, very shortly?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councilor Elliott, yes, we are.
Okay. A couple other quick things. Mr. Mayor, through you, I'm going to say to Chris, have we gone along Clarence Street with pink paint and highlighted trip hazards, I guess, on sidewalks? Is that us that's doing that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councilor Elliott. Yes, as part of the requirements of our response, for lack of a better term, the first thing we have to do as our due diligence is to first delineate it. We can react to that very quickly, and then that sort of helps us with the insurance, or reducing the insurance claims. That's all something that we do, and then that gets put into the inventory. Then we decide, are we going to grind it? Are we going to replace it? To what extent? But that's our first kick at notification and addressing the issue.
Okay, thanks. Because there's one on the sidewalk right out in front of my house, and I can't figure out. I mean, the lift in the one piece to the other is like, to me, it's minimal. And so now I'm driving along, looking at entire sidewalks, runs, saying, well, there's a gap that's bigger than mine, and there's one there, and I'm thinking, okay, we're gonna have to tear up thousands of meters of sidewalk to replace them that look worse than mine. So I'm trying to figure out, how do we go about identifying one that's worse than another?
Through Mr. Mayor to Councilor Elliott. What we do is we annually do a sidewalk survey. The criteria is given to the individuals that conduct a survey from the engineering group. Then they come back with their listing. It has all of the dimensioning and size of the panels and every deficiency that they've determined or located in the field. And then from there, we take that and prioritize it based on the budget that council gives us.
Okay. Just a couple of quick things. Chris, I'll pick on you. The crosswalk that we're going to install at the corner of Clarence and Catherine, where do we stand on that?
To you, Mr. Mayor, to Councilor Elliott. Staff has ordered the hardware and electronic control stuff and the signage. That's been placed with the region. The region is doing the install on that for us. The intent is to have that completed before Canal Days, and barring earthquake or unforeseen circumstances, we hope to meet that deadline without any problem. What we have done, though, is at the staff level, in the initial report that was presented to council, the crosswalk was shown to be on the side directly in front of Shoppers. The intent is to move it directly in front of the Legion, straight off of the end of the Market Square, so that we don't have people jaywalking across the Catherine Street entrance where they come down blindsided by the trucks that park on the corner. And this way they will be in a section of the road that's already been narrowed, which has the bump outs, and then they'll be able to proceed with the signage and the lighting and the controls from there. And so what happens is that the crosswalk is actually a shorter dimension, much to Councillor Bodner's good fortune. And that being said, when we do this, what this does is eliminates the extra work that we would have to do to try to accommodate the CIP designs in that area at this point in time. We can do this quickly and a little less money. Hopefully we'll be way under the budget, but That being said, we don't have to put the curbs and everything that we'd originally planned in the budget. And those will be done under the CIP once that section gets done.
Just a quick question then. Does the flower box in front of the Legion pose any sightline hazard for anybody crossing?
No. Well, there'll be a signal that'll actually stop the traffic, so
Right.
they'll actually be able to wait for the signal before they actually proceed out into the roadway.
Okay, perfect. That's all, thanks.
Councillor Demery.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
This is your second list.
Well, it actually was something that Councillor Elliott said that triggered a memory that I had wanted to ask a question about, and it was about the infrastructure funding. My concern is around the businesses. I wanted to make sure that we have looked at possibly some incentives or some ideas for those businesses to survive the downtown CIP, and are we actively working with those businesses because they need to get ready for it? And from what I've read, oftentimes we lose a lot over those things, so.
Mr. Louie?
So through your worship to Councillor Demery, as of now, nothing has happened, no discussions have taken place. We know from conversations with the BIA that they do have concerns and that fear that some of the businesses will struggle, possibly so much through the construction that to the point of failure and not being there when the downtown CIP is completed. I do see our economic development officer is here, and I think maybe that the best course of action would be for her and I to take away that advice, talk to the BIA, talk to the Chamber of Commerce and other agencies to make sure that all of the supports are in place for those businesses to flourish. I know, going back just a year and a half ago to when the bridge was out of commission, we put up signs to say these businesses are still open, and we listed the businesses and got them down here. And I didn't work here at the time that Main Street was done, but I know things were done at that time. Well, it's important that we do something that's going to help them get over the hump and still be there once we have the nice, new, shiny downtown.
If I could, there are many instances on websites from all over the southern United States where they've redone downtown cores, and in several cases, well, it's actually the norm more than the exception. They've lost almost 80% of the businesses and they have not returned. So, but there are some real success stories and some ideas of how to protect those businesses and allow them to go forward. So I would just hope that we took the initiative and moved with that and maybe created that lead.
Right.
Okay.
Councillor Kenny, one final question.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just because I forgot, I really wanted to send out a thanks, but I know we had the video, but to Breakwall, because Mr. Davies supplied that whole dinner for the students. And I thought that was very kind of him with the business just opening up. And he was right on it and had them all come in and had a private room set up for them. And so I wanted to thank him. And also Tender Cuts for supplying the pig's feet for them to do their, at no charge, for them to learn their suturing. So those two businesses, though it showed on the video, I just wanted to personally thank them because they did a great job. So thanks.
Thank you,
Thank
Councillor
you.
Kenny. Other staff responses to previous councillors' inquiries?
One more
Chief.
here.
Oh. Ladies and gentlemen, you're going to have to help me with this. When you come to council, have your list prepared.
Yeah,
We're back to Mr. Bodley.
Lost my mind.
Thank you. I had my list prepared, and then Angie brought up something that just about had my head explode, so I have to say. I heard financial incentives. I don't think we ever talked about financial.
Financial incentives.
Isn't that what you said?
Just incentives, period.
Oh, just like,
Financial. No.
way to go. I hope you get through all this, and,
Thanks for all you've done for me.
And by the way, I don't believe anything was done much on Main Street, so we'll maybe learn from that. But sorry, I heard financial incentives, so that's where I was. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Bodner.
Done.
Chief Cartwright.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have a few things. Some will be quick and one maybe not quite so quick. Just an update to council. As you're aware, I sent you out an email a couple of 3 weeks ago with regards to 400 Steel, with regards to that building and the elevator situation in that particular building. Just to let you know that I've arranged and the fire department's been able to coordinate a discussion with all of the people that live in the building with regards to fire safety. We've also had a meeting with the owner, Mr. Schultz, and we've coordinated another meeting with EMS and ourselves that if in the event there's any type of an issue in that particular building, we will assist, even so much so that this coming Wednesday, we're assisting an elderly lady with coming out of the 4th floor to move into a home. So the fire department's going to assist with that, with also the assistance of EMS. So we are trying to help as best we can. Safety Day, just want to make mention of the fact, a huge success. There was actually some discussion that we were thinking of moving it and combining it with our open house in October. After this past Safety Day, I don't think that's possible with the number of people that attended. It was a really huge success, and I appreciate the support from the community as well as council over the last number of years. Fire Marquee, just to give you a brief update on that, our insurance agent, Tim McElvoy, Peter Siness, and our CAO, Scott Louis, have had a meeting with him, and out of that has come a proposal by him to go out and look in the marketplace through an RFP to see what other agencies are out there offering similar type services. That I was authorized to authorize Tim to move ahead with that, which he has. He just started that today. And out of that will come information back to him. He's going to coordinate it to me and then report back to council as to where we should go, whether we go outside with Fire Marquee, another opportunity, or do it internally to ourselves. So we're going to have a more wholesome report coming forward. Just wanted to let you know that Enbridge, we have received under Project Zero another award from Enbridge. They're giving us another 150 combo carbon monoxide alarms, smoke alarms, a value of about $8,900, almost $9,000. So that is going to be brought forward into this space at some particular time in the not too distant future with regards to that. Scott Lawson and myself, as well as our information coordinator, attended the Fire Marshal's Public Safety Council award ceremony in Toronto last week, and the winner of that award was Giant FM, as well as Country 89, and their operations manager attended with us, and they received that award. And they have it, and you're going to see some public service messages coming out because of that. The smoke alarm, I think everybody has one of these. Should have gotten one of these tonight. If they don't, I can be more than happy to give you one. I want to say that Michelle Cuthbert did a bang-up job on this. We presented her some ideas, and then she basically ran with it. Basically, she's developed this along with the people that produced it for us. The plan with this is that we've identified various areas in the city that some we haven't gone to. Everybody will get these delivered to their homes with information, as you see, in both the front and back. And we will be going to those homes on a coordinated basis to make sure their homes are safe. They can contact us. There is a program that we've now initially started where there is going to be draws made on a monthly basis for those that call us, and we go and find that you are safe in your home and you have the proper carbon monoxide and smoke alarms in your home. If you're within that identified area, your name will go into a draw, and there'll be an award given to you on a monthly basis. So that's part of our new project. If I could, I would like to get some clarity on the burning bylaw. I explained to Councillor Danch what the situation was with our existing bylaw. At a previous council meeting a number of weeks ago, there was a recommendation made by himself, and I believe council supported that another report come forward to council looking at the permit system. After my explanation tonight, I need to know, do I need to go ahead with that report, or are we satisfied that what is available to people in the community is already what we're looking for?
Councilor Danch, a comment on?
Thank you, Your Honor. I'm okay with the chief. I mean, let's face it, nobody wants the fire truck showing up at 9:30 at their house telling them, you got to put that fire out because you're in violation. I mean, the whole idea is for people to be responsible, and I know that's a big word, but it's like, it's having a small fire contained in a chimney or something like a tractor trailer rim. We're not burning pallets, we're not burning tires, and we're not going to do this all night long. We just want to I just want to see if the people want to just have a small fire on occasion in a responsible manner where they can maybe teach their children a little bit more about safety, which is what we've been trying to promote in the city for the last 15 plus years that Chief's been here. That's my only issue. I have nothing else.
Councilor Byers?
I'm certainly satisfied with the chief's explanation earlier. I don't require an additional report, so that's just me.
It would appear that the council is content, Chief. Councilor Bonder?
Maybe just about everybody. So Chief, I'm a little, I'm not quite sure of what the container that the fire could be in. According to the bylaw right now, I know you mentioned a barbecue and a couple other things. Is there a definition of what the fire can be in? I don't want to send a false, something out there and all of a sudden people are starting to have something they shouldn't have.
Your worship, I can only read you what the bylaw says.
Right.
I know you have to be 3 meters from a building or a fence. That's within the current bylaw. If it has to be approved, which I and or Mike do on occasion. If people will call us and ask if they can have an open burn, which may consist of brush or things of that nature, not normally building materials. We don't normally go along with that, as council's aware. So we will go out and do a site inspection, take a look at the property, make sure it's safe, and let the person go ahead and burn. We make the call to dispatch, and if there's any issues through dispatch, they don't send everybody out. They'll contact Mike or myself to go and look at that. So that is still within that bylaw. So the way Part B of this bylaw, it says, the open air burning consists of a small confined fire that it is used to cook food on a grill, barbecue, or spit. And it's got to be of a size to be there for cooking the food. In other words, you can't have a large fire trying to hold marshmallows over. It's got to be, as Councillor Danch has indicated, a relatively small fire. Other things are allowed: barbecues, charcoal, propane barbecues, all those types of things are allowed over and above that. But to go along with what has already been stated here tonight, what we don't want to see happen is people light up a big fire after they've had a couple beverages, shall I say, and it gets out of hand. Quite frankly, myself, I can tell you right now, I drive by fires all the time in this city. People are in their backyards having a small campfire. I'll see smoke. We do not deal with those unless it's a complaint. So if you're cooking and you've got a fire going there and you're cooking food and we get a complaint because it's smoke, it's bothering your neighbor, you will have to put that fire out. I just want everybody to know that very clearly. You will have to put that fire out if somebody phones and complains. Every time we go to one of these, it's either out of control or we've received a complaint. It's the only time we show up.
I guess I just don't want that to be vague and have people then think they got the ability just to go ahead and do it. So I guess that's good. Is there any way we could, I don't know, how do we want to promote it? Do we want to put it on the website and say, this is allowed? Yeah, we don't want to have everybody just do it because we said they could do it now. I don't know, I'm at a loss, but I just don't want people to think they can do something and then get slapped with something.
Your worship, I can tell you this particular bylaw is on the website. It's been on the website since it's been passed. It's available. People, if they call us, we'll make sure they have a clear understanding as to what the rules are. Everybody gets a warning. If it gets out of hand, or if it gets out of hand and we have to put it out, then yes, there's an invoice issued for that. But everybody gets a fair opportunity, and quite frankly, I think we've been reasonable in most cases. I can give you a number of examples where people have been given warnings and or we've had discussions with individuals. I think where we get into it is if it gets out of hand and it becomes troublesome. And yes, obviously we end up being the referees of neighbor disputes from time to time. Whereas you did this to me, I'm going to get even with you. I don't know how we're going to, even a permit system is not going to eliminate that. I can issue a permit today to Scott Lawson if I wanted to, and if Scott Louis didn't like him, he could phone and complain about it. And then we'd have to go and tell him to put that fire out. A permit isn't going to fix the complaints. It just isn't going to happen.
Okay. Are there any other members of staff that wish to report on an issue previously raised by a councillor? Are none? If we go back to consideration of items requiring separate discussion, we have, I believe, still outstanding is number 19 and number 20. Both of those were raised by Councillor Kenny. Recommendation?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This was the Director of Operations be directed to issue a request for proposal to qualified leak detection firms with terms of reference that will require a reduction of lost water to 10%, and that the Director of Operations issue the request for proposal no later than July the 30th, 2018. And this was in regards to a notice of motion that I gave at a meeting on April the 23rd.
Is there a seconder for the recommendation? Councillor Danch? Discussion? Councillor Kenny?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. This was something that I felt, especially after we did our water budget and we heard, about all these things that have to be enacted. In fact, our next report, the number 20, is going to tell us all the things that this city has to do, but it still does not address the issue of our water loss. It's not got better. If it had got a little bit better, but it's not got better, and I'm very, very concerned that that's going to continue. There's been emails received from different people to all of council regarding different things that they think maybe be the cost of water loss, but I think it warrants investigation. And I think the only way to do that is to have a separate, do a request for proposal, and hopefully that they'll come back and tell us that we may have leaks. One of the suggestions was maybe pipes underneath the canal are leaking and we're not detecting that, and maybe this firm will be able to detect that. But let's put a request out and probably find an answer as why the city's water loss keeps increasing, and it's increased. Mr. Mayor, it's increased since the time I came on council. It's not got better. So I felt it was something that I needed to do, and so that's why I gave notice of motion to the same.
Thank you, Mrs. Kenny. Is there anyone else on council wish to speak to this recommendation? Councillor Bodnar.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm glad there's another report coming up on this by staff. I wouldn't support this. I just don't see having, and it'll only be the people that are on the water system that pay for this, and they'll have to pay for it. And I don't see any advantage in this whatsoever. I think staff have been looking into this. I'd like to hear more from staff on this, actually, and it may be covered in that other report, number 20, that's coming up. But I know staff are continuously looking for water leaks. I don't know that a company will come in and guarantee that they're going to get down to 10%. I just can't see how that's going to benefit the people that draw water. I'd like to hear from staff, but everything I've heard, they do this on a constant, they monitor this constantly.
So, through your worship to Councillor Bodnar and I guess all of council, it's probably a clerical mistake that 19 is before 20 on the agenda. 20 was designed to help explain 19 and to get some information out to council in advance of making a decision on 19, because I think all staff, like Councillor Kenny, would like to see this number get much closer to zero. We'd love to see the city have a very good handle on water losses, but what exactly is that going to take? What does that road forward look like? Was supposed to be the upshot of 20 and the discussion that ensued. So maybe the best course of action is for Councillor Kenny to withdraw the motion temporarily, put 20 on the floor, and then let's revisit 19 after 20 if she's willing to do so.
Sure, I can do that.
That might be the best way.
Okay, Councillor Kenny, do you wish to withdraw 19 at this time?
I will hold it off until we
Defer.
Yeah.
Okay, so we want to deal with number 20?
Number 20, yeah.
And you don't have to read the whole thing.
Okay,
just,
so the 20 is Engineering and Operations Division Report Number 2018-74, subject operational review of Port Colborne's water distribution and wastewater collection system.
Thank you. Secondary for the recommendation. Councilor Demery? Discussion, Mr. Lee or Ms. Sutter, we have some comments on number 20.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the rest of council. If you could delve into the report, and I hope everyone has had a good chance to have a look at the numbers and the details that have been laid out in the report. And what it's showing in here is I'd like to put to rest the term of unaccounted for water. There's a large section of water, or a large portion of water, I should say, that as detailed here in the report, as you can see by the numbers, that is water that we actually use to maintain the quality of the water within the system, and also to do the legislative requirements, if you would, that the municipality has to maintain our license. That being sampling, that requires a great deal of water, as is laid out in this particular report. There's a number of things, for example, I mean, even fire, it uses a small portion, but it is part of water that we cannot bill, but it is water that we have to account for and pay the region to. There's a number of sources of water use that we are not able to bill for, and the majority of those, as I said previously, has to do with maintaining the water quality within the system. The report details some of the reasons and why that has to happen, the ages of the pipes that are in the ground. About 40% of those pipes are of the old variety, some of them 60 and 80 years old, and those create water quality issues if we don't do what we call flushing. We have to do those flushing details. We have an annual program that we do, but we also have to do, in some instances, daily flushing, depending on water complaints and water issues that we detect in our sampling protocols. That being said, if you look at the number of cubic meters that we are actually billed, subtract the number of cubic meters that we have that we can bill to our customers, and then take out what we would consider to be authorized water use that we cannot bill for, and you subtract those numbers out, that really drops the amount of water that we can't specifically account for to a fraction of what it was originally if you don't split the numbers and the terminology out. I hope I'm not going too quickly to confuse folks, but I'm trying to get the terminology first. I'm open to any questions specifically if you have any. Or
It's a very comprehensive report.
It is. Excellent.
It could be the Bible for anybody questioning water usage.
well, that was the intent, Your Worship, was to try to get out there and explain and basically to educate council on some of the, give them the information that they didn't have previously. So I was trying to lay that out for them in that regards. There's also one area that we mentioned in the report specifically that we, as staff, hope to target in the upcoming years. And it has to do, actually I gave a handout to most of the councilors I had the opportunity to, where there's actually shows, this is a ruler that shows the leak quantities based on, well, as the information says here, it actually shows you a different size pinhole in a water service or a main. And it actually illustrates how many cubic meters per quarter, and then if you do calculations on that, it becomes quite astronomical. One of the calculations I put in the report, which is self-explanatory if you look at the math, is that if we have, well, for instance, we have a little over 5,800 private water services to residential homes within the municipality. And about 60% of them or more are of the age of 45 years of age or older and have never been touched. Just because of the methods of construction and the methods of replacements that we've done in the past years. So what happens is that we have new water mains and new city-owned services on the street and the road allowance that have been put in, over 60% of them replaced in the last 30 some odd years, 35 years. But the actual services from the property line to the homes have not been touched. And we suspect that this is a large area of leakage that we're currently experiencing because this happens before the meter. So we're not able to track that. And we suspect that those are large quantities of water disappearing that way. If you use that little slide rule scenario that I'd passed out to council before the meeting, if you looked at the very smallest hole on that handout, which is less than, it's a 1/16 of an inch. So if you had a 1/16 of an inch pinhole in a water service, that particular water service would lose approximately 280 cubic meters per quarter, which is over 1,100 cubic meters per year. If we had only 500 homes out of the 5,800 that had leaking water services, that's over 500,000 cubic meters annually. That being said, we think that that's probably our next area that we should be targeting. It's something that we haven't addressed, and we hope to in the near future.
Councilor Butters, then Councilor Demery, and
Well,
Councilor Kenny.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First off, I really do appreciate I appreciate this report and how thorough it is. So, Darlene, that's just incredible. So has part of the problem been then that we don't bill properly? Because, I mean, we had that big increase to cover, and we had to even take money out of a capital side of things to mitigate that jump. So have we just not been billing accurately enough then to cover what is an authorized unbilled consumption?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councilor Butters. Every meter has an inherent error in it. That's a given. That's an industry standard. Even a brand new meter that comes off the shelf has anywhere between a 0.5, I think it is, and a 1.25% error. If it meets those standards, they can sell it to us. So, but it can be positive or negative. So we sort of treat that as a non-starter in the equation. But as the meter gets older, it loses percentage points every year. So if we leave meters in for too long, that creates a problem in us recording the actual physical data, because the meter only does one thing. It slows down. It never speeds up, because it's strictly a mechanical process, and the wheel spins inside of a turbine, and if things start to build up within that turbine, it starts to slow down. That's just the physics of it. That being said, we have to address the actual meter side itself. We have some scenarios where we know that it can happen. We don't know to what extent. There can be theft because the meters can be bypassed, or there are other ways of dealing with the meter. We are doing everything we can to prevent that because that's lost revenue to the municipality, and that's our responsibility to make certain we don't have that. But there are also other things within the meter side of the equation that we have to look at. Right now, we're in the process of retrofitting the meter system when we have, say, a large commercial or a large residential unit. In the past, we would size the meter to what was thought to be the industry standard. But what we're finding is that if we don't put a meter in that has what we refer to in the industry as a compound meter, which can measure high flows and low flows, what's happening is that we're not getting accurate readings. So somebody can flush a toilet or have a shower, and if it's on a large meter, that meter will not pick up that flow. It doesn't have enough flow within that pipe to actually turn the turbine, if you would. So we're retrofitting on an active basis those types of meters and taking them out of the system and putting in the newer ones. What that's allowing us to do is then track the lower uses in a larger metered facility. That's an ongoing thing, and we will have to continue to work at that because that's a cost involved in that, and we don't want to raise the prices of the water even higher if we don't have to. So that's sort of a slide in, if you would, or a fit to the equation. There's so many things that we want to address here that staff is becoming very proactive in this. There's been a lot of bull sessions with the group. How do we go about this? A lot of research has been done in the last 3 or 4 months. And we're trying to figure out how we can get a tighter handle on these dollars and try not to One of the things we're doing, for example, is we're revisiting the flushing program. Maybe we should look at another way that we flush so that we have less water. Maybe there's ways that we can put in automatic flushing stations that will reduce the need for us to go and do large flushing through a hydrant. If we can do those types of things and find some economies, that's what we're aiming at.
Councilor Demery, then Councilor Kenny.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Chris. Chris, both you and Darlene, thank you very much for this report and for writing it in ways that are easy to understand. That was really helpful. My concern is really about having the information to be able to pass along to the people who are calling me as to what we are actively doing to look for these losses. So if you could possibly circulate a document that just outlines here's what we're actually doing, not what we're planning on doing, but this is what we are actually doing. And maybe you could put a little piece at the end that this is what we plan to do in the future. But just so that because we do get the calls and we get them off, and after this meeting tonight, I'm sure we'll have a lot of them tomorrow. But it would be really handy to be able to say, well, no, this is exactly what our staff is doing. So it would be helpful.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councilor Demery. We can definitely do that. It's a case of time, so we'll need a little bit of time to get staff to wrap their heads around how we want to put this into some sort of format. We can definitely make that available and help educate the public as to what's happening, where we're progressing, how we intend this to play out into the future. And then hopefully we'll be able to show some results in a very near, going forward, so that we can say that we've done this and this, and this is what the results have been. There's some other options that we've looked at too, and we've actually talked with finance about that, looking into the 2019 budget. But there are ways, we did some initial conversations and meetings with some water experts, for lack of a better term, and we're actually looking at the possibility of having an option out there where the customer can actually go in and get an instantaneous reading on their account, what is happening. So that involves some RF signals and different things, but we're hoping that if we get the okay to do that and the funds to put that in place, then they will be able to go onto their smartphone and they'll be access their account. And then they'll be able to see what their water use is today, yesterday, or the day before.
Councilor Kenny.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and again, Darlene and Chris, thanks for a well-written report. And I see how you say that it's under the Safe Drinking Water Act that we're obligated to provide a safe drinking water system for our residents. And I appreciate all the work that went into this report. That's why we waited so long to get this, because we were waiting for this report. You know, when you give a notice of motion, and you usually get result from that the following council meeting, but I was asked to wait. And then I was asked again to wait this time, and I said, no, I've waited long enough. I want some answers. And lo and behold, I got a call from the clerk who told me, guess what, B? The report's in today, so I can have it on this agenda. So I thanked you for that, but it still doesn't address, and I guess I'll have to ask you then, as a staff member, why are you objecting to a third party coming in to look? If we haven't been able to find it, and you know, we had some good suggestions. Maybe there's a leak under the pipes under the canal. Has that ever been investigated? But I just want to know, what is your main objection to having a third party come in and investigate water loss?
Mr. Lake.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councilor Kenny. It's not necessarily an objection. We have been in the search for water leaks for dozens of years now. We've had numerous consultants come in. They've done reports. They haven't found anything, nothing of any substance. You know, we've had the last one that came in, my recollection is that they went through the whole system, and the number of leaks that they found were so minuscule that we didn't pay their bill. It wasn't cost effective. What they saved us didn't offset the cost of the investigation. That being said, staff has the equipment, and we test on a regular basis. I mean, we listen on curb stops. We have the sounding equipment when they're out. This is something that we do on a constant and we have been doing it for a number of years. So it isn't that I don't object to that, I just don't think that at this point in time, based on what we have found and what we have heard from all the experts that we've had to the table so far, there doesn't appear to be any magic wand that somebody can come in and say, okay, I'm going to give you 10%. It just doesn't seem to be out there.
Councilor Kenny?
Then why are we still up every year? Every year come budget time for water, we're told the water loss has increased by 1% or 2%. And that's since I've been on council, Chris.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councilor Kenny. Actually, if you go back and look at the 10 years, we've had 6 previous years that were worse in the last 10 than this past year. So it doesn't continually go up. It goes up and down, depending on a lot of different scenarios. So we're trying to find those. That's all I can say to that point. My recommendation is if you, well, it's not my recommendation, a suggestion would be that if you seriously want to do that, we can do exactly as your motion says. That's not a problem. It's just that at this point in time, with what we know and what we found to date, I just don't think that that's money well spent.
Any other questions? Mr. Elliott?
Thank you, Mayor. Through you to Chris. In a ballpark, if you wanted to hire a consultant to come in and inspect your lines, give me a ballpark figure on what it would cost.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councilor Elliott. Well, first of all, I would be surprised if we could find someone that would guarantee us 10%, as the motion suggests. That aside, there would be an investigation. There's a lot of technologies out there, don't get me wrong. I mean, there's a lot of new stuff out there. Some of the sounding stuff that they're doing now is fantastic. But a ballpark figure, wouldn't surprise me if we were 6 figures.
Yeah. That's what I was afraid you were going to say. Yeah. The next question is, you identify 5,800 laterals in residential connections, and then split out the annual volume of leakage. How do you even go about investigating that to see if that's true, number one? And I guess number 2 is, how do you go remedying the situation?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councilor Elliott. Actually, what we're going to be doing in this year's water main construction is we're actually going to start to replace the water service lines right to the foundation wall, completely new. And in the process of installing that, this will be sort of a, for lack of a better term, a pilot to prove that what we suspect to be the case is actually true. And then that will, in the process of digging those up and replacing them, we'll be able to tell is what was the percentage of them that leaked. It's in an area where the homes are 40 to 45 years of age or older, and so it's a good area to start the process. If that proves to be as we suspect, then those numbers that I had stated as what-ifs in the report, the $500,000 in leakage and in annual just on the water services, then we're looking at, if those numbers are true, we're looking at reducing our lost water that we can't bill for, that we can't account for, down in the tune of 15 to 16%.
Yeah, and that's what I'm looking at. I mean, like the estimated annual residential service connection leakage at 560,000 cubic meters. That's like 15% of our total water purchase. You know, you couple that with the identified 366,000 liters in authorized unbilled consumption. I mean, that's a third of your water purchase right there. That's why with a motion to go for a 10% water loss, you can't even approach 10% because you're already at authorized unbilled consumption is 12%. Well, that exceeds your 10%. On a normal, tight operating water system, what is the expected annual loss on something that is tighter than ours?
Based on the AWWA reports, North America wide, a tight water system has anywhere between a 15 to 25% loss that they can't account for.
So that's straight losses. So then you factor in, and that doesn't take into account the authorized unbilled consumption, correct? That's just losses.
That's all of the factors that we know that we can account for. So the trickle that we use for firefighting, the stuff we use for flushing, the stuff we use for sampling, because we have to do sampling protocols, the things we use for construction, because those are, they're not metered, so we have to, we have to trace those, but we can't bill back to anybody because we have a deposit in the case of, say, building construction, where we have a dollar value that's charged on the permit, but those are not metered. Right. That's a revenue, but it's based on the volume of water. It's not something that we can bill per cubic meter, is what I'm saying.
So we're talking two different things, right? We're talking authorized unbilled consumption, which is stuff that is used, that we know that we're using, that we can't bill for. But then on a tight system, you're talking about 15 to 20% loss. Does that 15 to 20% include the authorized unbilled, or is the 15 to 20% just straight, I don't know where it went?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councilor Elliott, I don't know where it went.
Okay, so couple that with the authorized unbilled, right? On the low end of the 15 to 20, that's 15, and you got 15 on unbilled, that's 30%. Right, coupled
Correct.
together, that's 30%. So you can't, there's no physical possible way to get down to 10% losses. It's just physically impossible with the way things are right now.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councilor Elliott, I wouldn't say it's physically impossible, but the amount of dollars that you would have to spend to do that would be very astronomical.
That's, yeah, thanks.
Are you finished, Mr. Elliott? Okay. Is there any more questions on this issue? There being none, we call for the vote.
Just for information, right?
Yeah, just for information. All those in favor of the recommendation? Opposed? It's carried. Now we return to number 19, if you wish to proceed with that, Councilor Kenny.
We just heard it's impossible to get down to a 10%, but with the figures that this report has provided, we could get down to, I believe, a reduction of 20%. Remember, I'm only asking for a request for proposal. And if that request for proposal is an astronomical amount, then we don't do it, right? It comes back to this council and we vote not to do it. But I think it's just wise for us to see if there's such a company out there, and if that company can provide that service to our residents, then I would have no problem continuing with my notice of motion or my motion to try to get a reduction in our water loss to like 20%. I'll change it to 20% from the amount it is now.
Who seconded that motion?
That was,
I think I did.
Is this a friendly amendment, so we reduce the amount to 20%?
It's just to get information, Your Worship. Thank you.
Okay, any further discussion on this? There be none, call for the vote. Yes, Mr. Bott.
I still think they're going to put, staff is going to have to make up a request for proposals, say what they want to do. I don't know how much time that takes, but everything I've read in this report and everything, I think we're doing it already. I think if we're just doing this to satisfy a few citizens that are really hounding us to get that down to an impossible number. Oh, sorry. To get that down to an impossible number, I think it's a wasted exercise. I won't support that. I won't. It's just a waste of staff time, I think. Thanks.
Any further discussion? So the motion has been amended to require a reduction of loss of water to 20%, and we'll call for the vote on that reduced figure. All those in favor of the motion? 3. Opposed? 3. It's a tie vote. A vote against the motion. That concludes discussion of items requiring separate discussion. Are there any notices of motion? There being none, call for a motion of adjournment. Councilor Dench, seconded by Councilor Demery. Thank you for the effort. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. The regular meeting of council. Call that meeting to order. The regular meeting of council 14-18 on Monday, June 11th, today, 2018. Are there any addendum items, Madam Clerk?
There are no addendum items, Mr. Mayor.
I'd entertain a motion to confirm the agenda. Moved by Councilor Danch, seconded by Councilor Butters. All those in favor? Carried. Are there any disclosures of interest this evening? There being none, it shall be so indicated. I call for adoption of minutes. Regular meeting of council 11-18 held on May 14th, 2018. Special meeting of council 12-18 held on May 23rd, 2018. Motion to approve those minutes in bulk. Moved by Councilor Bodner, seconded by Councilor Butters. All those in favor? 2. Conceals hands.
In favor.
Carried. Determination of items requiring separate discussion. There being none. Approval of items not requiring separate discussion. Motion to approve. Moved by Councilor Demery, seconded by Councilor Kenny. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Proclamation, World Hepatitis Day, July 28, 2018. Call for a motion to issue that proclamation. Moved by Councilor Bodner, seconded by Councilor Butters. Call for the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Minutes of boards meetings, boards, commissions, and committees. Councilor, Madam Clerk, could you read those for us, please? We'll call for the passage in bulk.
We have the minutes of the Port Colborne Public Library Board meeting of April 3rd, 2018, the minutes of the Environmental Advisory Committee meeting of March 21st, 2018, and the minutes of the Port Colborne Historical and Marine Museum Board of Management meeting of April 17th, 2018.
All those in favor of approving those minutes, moved by Councilor Danch, seconded by Councilor Bodner. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Consideration of bylaws, Madam Clerk.
Bylaw number.
These in bulk. Go ahead.
I don't think that's what we normally do.
Okay.
Bylaw number 65854018, being a bylaw to appoint a deputy clerk commissioner for taking affidavits. Bylaw number 65864118, being a bylaw to appoint a deputy clerk commissioner for taking affidavits. Bylaw number 65874218, being a bylaw to authorize entering into an easement with Bell Canada over parts 1 and 2 on Plan 59R-14504. Bylaw number 65884318, being a bylaw to amend bylaw 58066112, being a bylaw to approve a draft plan of subdivision known as Chippewa Estates Bylaw 658944418 being a bylaw to temporarily close sections to various streets to vehicular traffic for the purpose of the Canada Day fireworks. Bylaw number 659045518 being a bylaw to temporarily close sections of various streets to vehicular traffic for the purpose of the 40th Annual Canal Days Festival. Bylaw number 6594618 being a bylaw to authorize the execution of a transfer payment agreement with Her Majesty the Queen in Right of Ontario as represented by the Minister of Tourism, Culture and Sport respecting the Celebrate Ontario 2018 grant. Bylaw number 659244718 being a bylaw to temporarily close sections of various streets to vehicular traffic for the purpose of the 2018 Canal Days Car Parade. Bylaw number 6593418 being a bylaw to temporarily close sections of various streets to vehicular traffic for the purpose of the Rose City Triathlon. And finally, bylaw number 6594918 being a bylaw to adopt, ratify, and confirm the proceedings of the Council of Corporation of the City of Port Colborne at its special and regular meetings of June 11th, 2018.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Call for motion to accept those bylaws. Mr. Bonder, seconded by Mrs. Kenny. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. At this time, I would call for a motion to go into closed session. That motion, that council now proceeds into closed session in order to address the following minutes. A, minutes of the closed session portion of the following council meeting, May 14th, 2018. And Madam Clerk, you can talk better than I can at this hour.
Planning and Development Department Planning Division Report 2018-73 concerning the potential sale of city-owned property pursuant to the Municipal Act 2001, subsection 239(2)C, a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board. Item C, Community and Economic Development Department Economic Development Division Report 2018-84 concerning the potential acquisition of land by the municipality pursuant to the Municipal Act 2001, subsection 239(2)C, a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board. Chief Administrative Officer, Special Projects and Corporate Strategic Initiatives Division Report 2018-85 concerning the Nyan Energy Lands and the Nyan Tank Farm property pursuant to Municipal Act 2001, subsection 239(2)E, litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board. And item F, Planning and Development Department Bylaw Enforcement Division Report 2018-86 concerning an update with respect to ongoing property investigations pursuant to Municipal Act 2001, subsection 239(2)B, personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal local board employees, and subsection 239(2)E, litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board.
Thank you. Call for the motion that we move into closed session to deal with those items. All those in favor? 1, 2, 3. That's up. I guess we have to have a seconder for that. Councilor Brothers, vote again, please. That's everyone in favor except Mr. Elliott. Oh, unanimous. Thank you, Mr. Elliott.